Welcome back. In this lesson I will explain how shadows, colors and shapes influence your background image. Now in the previous lesson I made this really quick and simple image. I've pulled up two images from one of my old works so I can explain just very quickly what I mean without too much hassle. So as you can see, the more details we have here in the front, like parts of these, I believe, flowers, yeah, it's better because we are closer to them when we are looking from this perspective. When you look at these flowers on the ground, which are the same colors as these ones, you don't see as many details, of course. Same applies to the grass. When I look at it from close up, I have more shadows, more tones, more midtones, but as I go more and more away, the amount of details becomes less and less. The focal point of this image is of course this tree, which in that game for the client I've made is really important for quests. And yeah, this is pretty much it. Now another example is this image over here. Now when you look over the hills, so hills in the background, you can already see we have sort of three layers, and each of those layers is a bit different than the previous one. So these two, so the first one is high in saturation, the second one becomes a bit darker, and the third one even more blends in with the atmosphere. So when you think about objects and how far away they are from you, you need to be aware of that they will become influenced by the atmosphere, and you should just shade them correctly. But even though this is a high resolution, sort of, it's 320 by 160, when it comes to smaller resolution like these ones, you still need to be well aware of that this still functions in low resolution as well. So if I put something like this highly contrasted color over here, you can already see how it influences our image. So this might be a boat if we wanted to, but if I wanted a cloud, for example, if I wanted to add a cloud, so something like this, the contrast is too high right now. We can use lower shades just to indicate those clouds much easier. Okay, so be careful when you are using different colors and especially shades and shapes. Now, for example, when it comes to shapes, you can see this flower over here is quite big, but these ones are already quite a bit smaller. So they are what, 5 or 6 pixels in total, whereas these ones are a lot more. And if I go even further, you can see there are only 2 pixels, and that's fine. They are here just to add a bit more color to this entire image. But overall, you should be careful that the closer the object is, the more details it will have. The further away it is, the less details. This applies to the ground, to the grass, to the objects, to everything. And when it comes to the same principles, the further something away it is from us, the lighter it will be in the colors, especially because it becomes influenced by the atmosphere. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how you can add to your water a reflection of the surroundings, and it's quite simple using transparency or alpha when it comes to colors. Now let's say I want something extremely simple like so. I want a water, let's say, let's put it here like so. Now I won't be going into too many details, especially not for this example, because I just want to show you the trick. So let me create something for the landmass. It can be something like green. Maybe we have few shapes over here, doesn't matter really, just so you can see the effect. Then I need a sky, which is of course in the blue hue, so something like this. Maybe I can even add some sort of the mountains behind. Again, I won't be shading in anything. This is just so I can show you the trick, but it's quite useful trick. All right, so what if I want to project them here onto my water? Now, what would I want to do? Well, I can pick these ones that I want the projection to be on the water. So I want the landmass, these few shapes, which can be like trees or bushes or whatnot, and I wanted the mountains. So I use my magic wand tool. If you have put them in separate layers, you can just select the layers. But essentially, I want to copy paste them. So you can see over here. And I do want to put them, at least in this software, on another layer. Now I can go here and I can flip them vertically. So upside down. And now we have something here on our water. Now, I do want to reduce the transparency, so I will take my layer and reduce the opacity down to, let's say, something like 73%. And that's pretty much it. You're all done. You have your reflection of the water. Now, if you want to go a bit further, you can even distort the image a little bit. You can, if you want to introduce a bit of waves to the image, that's completely fine. You can do it just like so, with few simple straight lines. You can create that. And here we go. You have a very simple and very easy way to replicate whatever your surrounding is onto your water surface, especially if it's a calm water surface. If it's like a big giant waves, then it's something else. But yeah, this should work for pretty much any of your beginning backgrounds. Welcome back. In this challenge, I will give you one simple exercise. Draw images, nothing else. So you can go online and search and Google for your favorite artists, be it digital or traditional, maybe even photographers. If you don't have any favorite ones, you can just Google whatever you want to draw. So if you like castles, you can Google castle images and then try to use those images as a reference to create your pixel art. Of course, try to simplify that image as much as possible and in the lowest resolution possible as well, using the smallest possible color palette. Now, if you want to draw something with a focus, I will give you 2 or 3 simple images. First one is this one, a simple forest. Now, all of these 3 images are a part of my portfolio, so you're not allowed to use them commercially, but you can use them for research and education purpose, which we are doing right here. So use them as a reference image only. Now, notice one thing. When we go into our background, our colors become darker and darker instead of lighter, even though it is daylight. And that is because the further away we go in the forest, the thicker everything becomes and the less sunlight we get, and we can barely see what is actually in the background. Same thing applies to this next image, which is a labyrinth. Now, of course, this is a closed room, so the further away we go, the darker it becomes. In my previous lessons, I've showed you examples where our environment would influence our colors, and that is because it was daylight and we could see everything clearly. But in these 2 cases, it can become darker. So depending on the situation, we can have different results. And the last image is sewers. Now, this one is kind of easy to make because it has a really small color palette, but at the same time, it's kind of highly detailed. So I will post in one of the next sections, more advanced one, the speed paint of this entire process with my commentary. So if you want to replicate this one, use smallest amount of possible color palette when it comes to it. Don't try to make everything just as it is, because you will be creating it in lower resolution, so you won't be able to put as many details as you would like to. Same thing applies to these ones. If you want to take your chances and be brave, the entire picture of all of these 3 images is the same. The resolution is 320 by 160. So 320 by 160. This is the width and height of all of these images. Now remember to have fun and relax. You don't have to get everything correctly. Use reference images online, and please remember to post your images in the discussion. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome. In this section I will show you how to draw different pixel art characters. We will start from low resolution like 8x8 pixels canvas, then we will move on to 16x16 and then 32 on 32 pixel art characters. At the end, I will give you, of course, a challenge where you will have to create different characters in different resolutions so you can polish your skills. Welcome back. So we finally got to creating our first characters. Now this part is really exciting. Now I want to start with extremely low resolution. So in this lesson I will show you how to create 8x8 pixel art character, meaning it will be on the canvas that is 8x8 pixels. So let's create just that. Now these characters are one of the cutest ones you can possibly create, so let's try and have fun. Okay, so let me just, oh, it's already like that. Anyways, we will go and create our character very simply. First of all, you need to think about what you want to create. I want to put some eyes onto my character, so let's do that. We can put 2 pixels like so, or we can even spread them apart a little bit more. Now you do need to have in mind this is extremely simplified character. If we are going by the basics and realistic human anatomy, you won't be able to achieve this on this canvas, which really isn't important because this is a game and it doesn't have to be realistic. So let's create a body for our little guy over here. We can create maybe something like this. Now I will just create a background layer, which I will put in a lighter tone, just so you can see him a bit better. All right. So we need legs, and we can put something like so. This sort of looks like a minion if it were rounded, but yeah, let's just ignore that. All right, so this is pretty much it. If we want, we can add like few arms, maybe something a bit darker for the color, like so. If you wanted to create a certain different, let's say a race to your game or a platformer, this is really nice. Now look how we can simply achieve a little character using just few pixels. Let's go even more. Let's say we want to create a gnome, for example. We want to add few more pixels to our feet just so they are wider. We can keep the eyes where they are. We can maybe change the color of our skin to something like this, and then we can maybe put some sort of a hat like so. Maybe giving green a bit too bright, so something like green. We can give him like few arms. We can maybe put our eyes a little here at the bottom, and here we go. Just like that, we have something that looks like a gnome. Now all of these characters are really easy to so please have fun with them. Let's go from scratch. Let's try to create something else, and then we can start either with eyes, we can start with the feet, we can start with the body, however you like to. So let's create different eyes. This time they will be more spread apart, so something like so. We can then again add our skin tone. Let's put our character a bit to the left. All right, now we have our body, we have our huge head for our character, which is completely fine. We are not drawing anything realistically. Now let's say we want to make him a knight. We want to have something like an armor, so something like this. We might want to have a simple, let's say a shield, It can be in brown color. It doesn't have to be completely square. We can do something like so. We can give him a sword if we wanted to. Again, this part is completely creative, so just relax and have fun. Especially these low resolution ones. You can create a bunch of different characters in such a short amount of time. And sometimes games like this that develop really quickly can sometimes be extremely fun to play as well. Now we want to maybe, yes, let's make a bit more space. So I'll put my character over here. We can give him a sort of a helmet. So something like this. And then we can give him a simple sword, like so. And he can hold onto that sword like this. And just like that, we have a simple character, even with a sword and a shield in such a low resolution. Now, isn't that cool? We can create wizards, we can create rangers, you can create all sorts of things, so feel free to have fun. In the next lesson, I will show you how to create a character on 16 by 16 pixels canvas. I'll see you then. Welcome back. So in the last lesson I showed you how to create 8 by 8 pixel art character. Now we will go on to 16 by 16 pixels. So let's create a bigger canvas. And here we go. Now again, I want to just create a background that is a bit lighter. And this time I'll be using only the shapes. So I won't be adding the facial features like here, meaning the eyes and then the body. I'll go only with the shapes itself. Now usually you can, when it comes to art, you can take and make your entire character into 8 pieces, meaning our entire body height would be of 8 heads. So when you go and create 8 heads like so, we would get a full height of our character. Now if you are introduced in art, you may already know this is like a perfect form of humans that Greeks wanted or whatever, but we can use this as a guideline to create our character. So since we have only 16 pixels of height, then we can divide it by 8 and we can have like 2 by 2 pixels of our head width and height. Now after we placed our head, we can place 1 pixel for our neck. Then we want our shoulders, and then we want to go and pretty much find a half point where our legs will begin. So on our 8 pixel, which is over here, this is where our legs will begin. Let me just change the color to something else. And here we go. We can input it like so. Now we have already something that resembles a human using only shapes. If we wanted to add arms, which we kind of should, we can go from the shoulders like so, and the arms end a little bit here where the hips are. Now we can create something like this if we wanted to. We can keep him like as a square, and that's completely okay. Now let's try to use this one and see what we can come up with. Again, I want to put my skin tone in first. You can use whatever you want to. You can even start with the clothes straight on. Now notice one thing, when we are keeping this shape, we don't have eyes. So if we try to put eyes here, we simply don't have the space to do so, because we need at least 1 pixel apart in order to create eyes. Otherwise we can have like sort of a visor or something like that, but 1 by 1 eye we won't be able to achieve that like so, unless he's a boogie eye or something. Well, let's go with something really classic. We can have fun, like something in blue colors, maybe something complementary, so something in the orange. I want to desaturate it a bit. a bit lighter. Okay. Now we can add sleeves to our character, and we don't have to. We can do whatever we want. We can add a mask to him, to his face, like so. If he's a ninja, we can completely put him like so in the black. Who will know? Maybe he's a burglar. Maybe he has like a bandana. Maybe we want to give him a red color over here, so perhaps we want to use blue and white colors, or even black and brown colors. To maybe we can make him a pirate, who knows. You can add a bit of textures like so over here. Maybe he has something over here. Maybe he even has a sword on his back, who knows. Because we can pretty much create whatever we want to. Like some sort of a fantasy sword, like huge big one. Like a pirate with a huge two-handed sword. I mean, ain't that fun? Alright, so as you can see, very quickly we can create different characters. Now I will be showing you how to create animations for different types of characters, but for now, you know, just relax and have fun. You can start with this body, which we've done at the beginning, and then you can go from there. You can start with the shapes, then you can add different shapes to them if you want to. Now let's say you don't want a realistic one. We can create even bigger one, so like wider character. For now we are keeping our perspective for like platformers, so we are looking straight onto the people. When we go into top down and RPG view, we will be using something different, like Pokemon, for example, Zelda, etc. But for now, let's keep it in a platformer. Again, you can create a huge head, just put a giant square. You can decide where you want your legs to be, like so. They can be thicker, they can be thinner. Our character can be thicker, like so. These can be his arms. We can round even up his head a little bit. Since we are looking him at the side view, we want to add something in such a big head that will indicate that he's looking to the side. You have this entire where the chin begins. We want to indicate that part, so we can just erase one pixel. Again, we can add our skin tone. Again, you can use anything for skin tone. If he's an alien, you can use like green, blue, whatever. Just feel free. Adding a little bit of clothing. Like this can be something like Neanderthal, maybe, if you want to keep it in it like so. We can go and even erase a bit of the clothing. We can, hell, we can, if we wanted to, we can even make like a cute little dress, like so. If you want, you can even add let's say a hair. We can add like a purple hair. Like a huge purple hair going all over the body, like so. And we are not using any shadows here. We are not using we are using just one color for one tone. We are not having highlights, shadows, anything. We are just having fun with characters. Remember, pixel art is something that should be simplified. We can add shadows if we wanted to. So if we take this tone, I can darken it up a little bit. And then wherever our hair is falling, we can add a bit of shadow. We can take this same color for our dress, and wherever it folds, we can give it like few wrinkles. Again, wherever the shadow is falling, we can create it like so. Just like that, we have a simple character. We can add eyes if we wanted to. You can keep the eyes away. So you can add something like this. If you wanted to create something really funny, you can go with something like this. I mean, it's all up to you. Just have fun. It's your canvas, it's your world. You can do whatever you want to. I'm just showing you guidelines how you can create different characters, but this entire canvas has enormous amounts of possibilities. So relax and have fun. I'll see you in the next lesson where I will show you how you can create a 32 by 32 pixel art character. Welcome back. So in this lesson I will show you how to create 32 by 32 pixel art character. Now this canvas can be a bit intimidating to beginners, but it's really not that scary. Yes, when you multiply 32 by 32 you get 1024 pixels. That's quite a lot of possibilities, especially when it comes to millions of colors that you have available in your RGB section. Let's just jump into it and show you how to create few simple characters. Now we can use the guideline of 8 heads, which is quite simple. So let's say you want to create a head which is 4 pixels tall, and somewhere on the half we want to find where our hips begin. So here we have the 16 pixel, and this is where our hips will be. Now let me just erase these ones as I want them on the next layer. Okay. The neck is 2 pixels. Then we have our torso, which can be like 2 pixels at each side. And we can just go over at the bottom. And then we can put our legs all the way to the bottom. We can even increase our hips by 1 or 2 pixels if we wanted to. Quite easy. Then we can use our hands and arms to create them like so. We can soften things up if you want to by erasing these 2 pixels here on the shoulders. Now this is only shape of our character, as we can create all sorts of different things with him. Let me show you a few different things you can do. One, you can put colors in for, let's say, skin tone. Now with this, for an alien you can put any color you like. It can be purple, it can be green, whatever you want. So we need clothing. We can put somewhere over here, like very simply. Maybe he's bare feet, so he doesn't have any shoes. Maybe we want to give him some sort of a shirt with long sleeves. Yeah, long sleeves and short sleeves here on the legs. Maybe this is a sweater, so let's give him a hood in the back. And just like that we have a very simple character. Now if you wanted to create him in, let's say, different body proportions, we can certainly do so. Let me duplicate this character, and let's say his legs will be a bit thicker. And this is completely fine by itself. Now I just want to, now since our body is hiding this time our arm, we can't really see him, so this is a bit bulkier character. If you want to create someone, let's say, fat, we can just increase the size of the belly, like so. We can increase also the size of the legs. Maybe he doesn't have a hoodie. Probably not. And here we go, just like that we have a more fat character. Now if you want a skinnier character, we can certainly do so as well. I can duplicate this character again. I will put the legs a bit closer, so like so. I can erase this entire part, and we can already see he is quite a bit skinnier because we have less pixels to work with. Then I can erase this part, and here we go. If he is like really skinny, we can even erase these parts over here on the hips, but this is like starvation or something like that. Okay, so using something like this we created normal character, skinny character, fat character. Again, Even here we can put maybe a bit of chin, maybe even a thicker head. But yeah, remember to have fun. I mean, the canvas is just a tool for your imagination to create something. So use your imagination, see what you can come up with, and just feel free to experiment. This is really important because by experimenting, you practice your imagination. Let me give you just one quick example. We can go with a lot bigger head. Let's say it's a square on a new layer. A bit too big, let's say a bit smaller. Okay. Let's go with let's say a circle. Completely fine. It's 19 pixels of, let's say, 20 pixels. Just to round it up, nothing more. All right. Now, you don't have to use full width and height of your canvas. 32 by 32 pixels is just your canvas, and you should just use it as much as possible, but you don't have to use it entirely. So let's see, we can have like body, we have the legs. Why does this remind me of Silent Happiness? Yeah, never mind. Okay, so if I go with some kind of, let's say, some kind of pants, maybe some kind of a shirt. This might be a green one. Again, you can create wizards, you can create knights, you can create anything, really anything. So let's say our character is watching a bit to the side, and his arms are like so, a bit stiff. Maybe you can give him a sleeves. And let's say we want to give him some big eyes. Like really, really big eyes. A bit too big. Like so, maybe some creepy smile. And just like that, I mean, it's quite funny, but just like that, you have like a character for a horror game, for example. I mean, or something like comedic, never mind. But yeah, the point is just have fun, relax, experiment. So these are just few ways how you can create different characters on this canvas. But really, if you want to even expand your knowledge, you can always go online and just Google 32 by 32 pixel art characters, because there are many of them. There are thousands upon thousands of styles of different characters. I just shown you a few different ones over here. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. Welcome back to the challenge. So I will give you one simple exercise. I showed you how to draw 8 by 8 pixel art character, 16 by 16 pixel art character, and then 32 by 32 pixel art character. The exercise is very simple. Create 10 different characters in each resolution. So 10 characters in 8 by 8, 10 characters in 16 by 16, and 10 characters in 32 by 32 pixels. Remember, you don't have to create only 10. This is really the bare minimum for practice. You can create hundreds if you want to. Once you finish your characters, please post them in the discussion panel so we can all check them out. Welcome! In this section, I will show you how to create very simple animation and explain what animation is. I will also show walk and run animations on 8 by 8 pixel characters, 16 by 16 characters, and 32 by 32 pixel characters. I will also show you attack animation and few different motion blurs. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will explain what is animation. Animation is a technique where we combine static images to create the illusion of movement. Movies do it, game industry does it all the times, so we need to understand what exactly it is. Those single static images are called frames. So every single frame is important in our animation, especially in pixel art where we are animating mostly frame by frame. So let me give you an example. You can see this little ball bouncing around in low resolution, and this is animation. you can see the movement clearly, but each of these frames, each of these single images is static by itself. If I were to pull out this single frame out of the context, it would just be a simple image. However, by combining those images together, especially when they are similar to each other, and the only difference in that image is what creates the illusion of movement. So you can see the background itself is always the same, but the only thing that changes is this little ball, and when it moves, it creates this illusion. So the things that are changing from frame to frame is what creates the illusion of movement. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. In the next lessons, I will show you how to simply animate different things as well as our characters. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to animate a simple grass moving. You can use this grass in platformers, 2D action shooters, pretty much whatever you like. So let's go and create a simple canvas. Let's say it's 32 by 32 pixels. And let's say we want to create something like a mock-up for our platformer. So let's create our sky, we need our dirt, and we need our grass. But remember, the objects that we are going to animate will need to be different on a different layer. So let's go and create a new layer. So this will be our background layer that we won't be animating. You can think of them as tiles. So we can put BG. We can lock that layer and create a new one, which will be our grass, which will animate. Now let's create a simple grass. We can use just a few pixels. So let's say it's going to be 5 pixels tall, and we can put it like this. No need to add shadows, nothing like that required for now. I might create it a bit darker. Yeah, I'll keep it light like so. Okay, so how to animate it? Well, when the wind hits the grass, it will move and then bounce back. So first we need to decide where is the wind coming from. It's going to be coming from the right to the left. So it's going to be hitting from this side, like so. Let's animate it. So this will be our first frame. Then we can add another frame and change it just slightly. Since the wind is hitting, we need to start moving our grass in the direction of the wind. Then we can create and duplicate this layer and create another layer, another frame, and then pull it back even more. And then we can even take this little one over here and pull it as well. Then on another frame, we are going to pull this entire grass like so. I meant this top part. And now what happens? Well, when the wind has passed our little grass, it will want to go back and then bounce. So let's put it back together. You can do this either by duplicating these 3 frames, or you can simply go and animate it towards the back. And let's do this frame to frame. So I want to go back. And on the next frame, I want it to be in the default position. Like so. Now if you take a look at the first and 7th frame, they are completely the same. But if you look at the animation, it looks a bit off. It looks a bit too stiff, so we want to add a little bounce to our animation. So when the wind has passed our grass, and since our grass is flexible and really thin, it will bounce back. So let's create this on the last frame, a little bounce to the back, like so. And you can already see this is quite a bit better. If we add just another frame, where we can bounce our entire grass, and then we need to bounce it again just a little back towards the first frame, which is this one. You can already see how our grass is animated. Now if you want to animate more of this, you can put this in Unity like as a prefab or something. But if you animate it like so, you can actually take this entire layer and you can duplicate it Just a few seconds. And once you duplicate it, you can actually take this entire layer and move it to the side. And now you have two grasses animating at the same time. Now, the one key thing to think about this is, well, the wind won't be hitting the two of these grasses at the same time. It will go in different ones. So we can just extend our first frame on our duplicate just a little bit, like so. Let's see, like we can create another one over here, like this. So I created another, just another frame, and I'm going to take this top one, so our grass copy, which is the left one, and I will pull those frames just to the side, like so. And I do want to keep our position here, so I will want to just copy paste this position as well as this one. And now you can already see our grasses are moving in different time periods just by one frame, but it gives it a better illusion. Now you can do this in 100 different ways, but this is a way you can very simply animate a grass. So this is it for this lesson. I will see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this challenge I will give you one simple exercise. Choose an object that you've done from one of the previous challenges when we drew objects from simple geometrical shapes, and just try to move them. Move them left or right, up and down, maybe rotate them and see how it looks. But keep it very simple. We will go into animation principles later on, and that is when the real animation will take place, the more complex one. But for now, this is enough. And the point of this exercise is not only that you start developing your eyes for the animation, but the most important one is that you get comfortable with animation in your software. So once we get to more serious animation, you can work a lot more quickly. Okay, so give it a try and let us know in the discussion how it went. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create a walk cycle with 8x8 pixel art character as well as an attack animation. So let's go and see what do we have here in our timeline. I prepared two very simple animations, so you can just first watch and then we will replicate it. So here we go. First, the walk cycle. We have only 4 frames. When we increase the resolution of our character, we will have more frames to work with, but for now, 4 is enough. I will just go and show you how it looks. You can see here in the preview as well as here on the main canvas. I colored in my arms in orange color and my legs in the green color, just so you can see how they interact with each other. When we go and look at the frames themselves, we have only 4 of them, and our first and third frame we have this idle pose, so nothing has been changed. However, on our second and fourth frame is where the movement is happening. When you look at the second frame, you will notice the difference between the first and second frame is that the leg is now in the air and our arm has also moved up. You can try to imagine that when you are walking in real life, when you put your right leg in front of you, your right arm goes behind. Same applies to the left arm and left leg. They are always in the opposite directions. So this is what we replicated here. When our leg is moving in the front, in other words up, then our arm is going to go back a little bit. Try to imagine this little character like in real life. So when we go on the third frame, we just put it back on the ground, and on the fourth frame we do the same thing but for the other arm and leg. So we put the other leg here in the air and our arm goes in the back, and since we are looking at our character from a certain angle, then we won't be able to see this other arm. And also, when you put one leg in front, the opposite arm goes in the same direction. So this is why you can see this movement. We put our leg here in the air, we put our arm also in the front, and we hidden this arm over here. On the second frame, we only did this. There's nothing more that we needed. Now, and when you look at this walk cycle, you can see how it looks pretty nice. Now, what if I wanted to change this a little bit? Well, we certainly can do so. Let me duplicate this entire layer, like so. I'm going to hide this one. I just showed you a sneak peek of attack animation. We will get to that in just a few moments. Now, when it comes to walk cycle, we can simplify things. We can erase the arms altogether on all of the frames, and we can have our character move only with his legs. Now, I do want to create this movement, and this is it. This is all you need. If you want your character to be entirely black in color, we can do so very, very easily. And you can see how he moves. So the first and third frame are the same ones. They are static, they are idle. The second and fourth is where our legs just switch. So if you look, if I put my character all four poses in default one, you'll see this simple idle pose. On the second frame, we put one leg in the air, and on the fourth frame, we put the other. And just like that, we have our movement. If you want to emphasize his movement a little bit to make him more jumpy, so to speak, you can put his entire body one frame up on second and fourth frame. So when he puts his leg in the air, and already we have this bouncy movement, which is quite nice. When are these types of characters used? Well, we use them in platformers mostly, especially in platformers where we need very, very precise controls. I mean, in general, you want to have nice control and precise inputs from your player to your character. But in these types of walk cycles, when they are really, really short, platformer is really fast. You want this character to move really fast on your map, because otherwise it won't look good. It's all up to you. If you want arms, you can put them here. If you don't want arms, you can leave them out. You can put some clothing. It's all up to you. Pick any character from your 8x8 character collection and just try to animate a simple walk cycle. This is all you need. First and third frame are the idle poses. Second and fourth are where the movement happens. You put one leg in the front or in the air, and that same arm in the opposite direction. Then you do the same thing for the other leg and arm. That's all for now. I'll see you in the next lesson where I will show you how to make this attack animation. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create this simple attack animation and what are keyframes. So in previous lesson I showed you this walk animation, which can also be used as run animation. So on low resolution we don't need anything else. Walk and run animation on these types of characters are the same. So when we come to this attack animation, you can see here how it looks. Now let me break this down frame by frame to you. On first frame, our character is in his idle pose. I've given him a simple shield, so this is our character in default, and a simple sword. On second frame, he puts his sword in the air just by 1 pixel. This is called anticipation, and it can be used very, very carefully. In these types of games where you are making an action platformer or an RPG, you want your response between input of the player and the movement on the screen, meaning the animation, you want it to be very quick and snappy. So anticipation is something that you can use, but only on 1 frame. And on later lessons, I'll show you why you should try to avoid anticipation. But for now, let's stick to this example. Now, as you can see, on our second frame, our character prepares for the attack. This is called anticipation. On our third frame, our character swings down and creates this motion blur. And our fourth frame is exactly the same as the seventh one, or the third one in this case. They are completely the same, but without motion blur. So when you create motion blur, you want to make sure that at least 1 frame after the motion blur, is when you have your entire character settling down. Alright, this is quite simple. So what is keyframing? Well, if I were to create a keyframe pose for our attack, it would be like this. So we have our first and fourth pose, and this is all there is to it. So I can even duplicate like so. We have only two poses. Those are called keyframes. Keyframes are the most important poses in your animation. Now, which are the key poses in your animation is something that you develop over time, but when it comes to walk cycles, run cycles, attack animations, they are quite simple. So basically, the first one is from your idle pose. The second can be pretty much where you attack, and that's all there is. Then you can add a few frames in between, which I've done. I created this anticipation frame and then the motion blur frame. And just like that, with 4 frames, we have very, very simple attack animation. I made my character really, really simple, so you can pretty much replicate it very easily. And if you want to try this out right now, please do so. Again, pick one character from your 8x8 character portfolio and just put like a sword on him or any other weapon you'd like and try to recreate this type of animation. This is all for this lesson. In the next one, we'll jump onto higher resolution character. Welcome back. So in this lesson, I will show you how to create a walk and run cycle for our character, which is on 16 by 16 pixels canvas. So you can see our pretty design of our character, which is quite similar to the previous one. And here in the preview, you can always look at how the animation looks. Now I will explain all of the key poses which are in this animation. Don't worry about it. Now we have essentially 4 key poses. First one is the contact pose, which is this one. You can look here on the main canvas. After the contact pose, we come to the down pose. After down pose, we have the passing pose, then up pose, and then we repeat those 4. So contact again, down, passing, up. Those are the 4 key poses, and we repeat them for each side of the body. Now, if you're not too sure, if you will remember key poses, don't worry about it. I've given you a PNG file with the sequence of the entire walk cycle with each of those key poses, so you can just download it if you want to look at it as a reference, but I will also show how to use that reference in the next lessons. Before we go into creating our animation, you want to make sure you have your character. Pretty easy, right? So pick any character from your 16 by 16 pixel art characters portfolio and try to recreate this walk cycle, but be sure to watch this video first. Our first pose is the contact pose. Why is it called like that? Well, before each contact pose comes the up pose, and in our up pose, our character is on one leg, he's on the toes, and on the other, well, the other leg is in the air. It's not touching the ground. So when we touch the ground and make contact with the ground, this is why it's called the contact pose. In the contact pose, the most important thing is that our legs and arms are mostly spread apart from each other when in comparison to the other poses. So you want to make sure that our legs and arms are opposite to each other, but really, really spread apart. And remember, when we are walking on or running, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that our leg makes the opposite movement of our arm. For example, this leg over here goes in the back, but this arm goes in the front. Same applies to the opposite side of the body. When this leg goes in the front, the arm goes in the back. This is the movement that you really need to remember. Also, one easier trick is to remember that, well, the opposite leg from the current arm is in the same direction, meaning when our arm goes in the front, our opposite leg goes in the front as well. Quite easy. Same applies to the back. When our one leg is in the back, our opposite arm goes in the back as well. Quite easy. Okay, so what happens after the contact pose? Well, we have the down pose, also called the recoil pose by some animators. In this position, our character, after he contacted the ground, he went down a little bit to settle down just a little bit in that position. We want to move our arms and legs towards the middle of our body. So you can see the difference. Our left arm is coming from the back of our character, again in the front. Our arm is going to swing in the opposite direction, and same applies to these legs. So we want to prepare our character for the passing position, which is the next one. This is when our current leg, well, which was in the back, starts passing our front leg, current front leg. So you can see in this position we put our entire leg in the air because it's currently passing the current front one. And when you look at the arms, they are starting to be spread apart a little bit. Now on the fourth frame, which is after this passing pose, our character goes on his toes and goes up a little bit. You can keep the arms almost the same. You can just spread them apart just a little bit more, not too much, if you can see this. But the most important thing when it comes to these four positions, apart from the position of our legs and arms, is the height of our character. So you can see on the first and third frame the height of our character is the same. But when we come to the down pose, our character goes down by 1 pixel, and our fourth pose, our character goes up by 1 pixel, which is also why you can easily remember down and up pose. And down, our character goes down with the head height, and our up pose, our character goes up a little bit. So what happens after these four key poses? Well, we repeat them, but for the opposite leg. So you can see on the fifth position, this is still the contact pose. You can see the first and fifth frame are both the contact position. You can see how our arms are again spread apart as much as they could be on first and fifth. And if you look at the body, you will notice one simple thing. When you look from our angle at our character, look at his arms. They are really spread apart. And our first frame, it's same thing but for our legs. When you look on first frame, the position of our arms, you can see how they made. On our fifth, same thing applies to our legs. One is hidden behind the other, just like our arm is hidden behind our character here. So this is the contact pose for the opposite leg. Be sure not to draw them identically, because here's what will happen. Look here at the animation. This is only four key poses for one side. Not enough, it's not finished. So we really need to add the rest of the key poses. After our contact pose, what comes again? Well, comes the down position. And again, our character is in the recall position before he goes into the passing position and our up position. So we basically just repeated the process, so I don't have to repeat the same things that I've said. And if we go through this entirely, we have this nice walk cycle. You will notice that if you look only at one leg, let's say this one, and you can see that we have 8 different positions for that leg before it goes full circle. And that's okay, but you don't need to remember 8 positions. Just remember 4 key poses, and that you need to apply them on opposite sides of the body. That's okay. Now, how about run animation? Well, run animation is quite easy. It's like walk animation when it comes to key poses, so we have the same ones, but you emphasize the movement. One also little trick to make your animation look better is that you lean your character forward a little bit. So you can see the difference between walk and run cycle. Quite nice. At the run cycle, again, we have our contact pose, we have down, we have passing, up, and in our up pose, our entire character is in the air. Not only one leg, the entire character jumps off the ground, because when you are running, your both feet get off the ground at some point. Then we repeat the contact, down, passing, and up. and we get this really nice animation. Now what happens really often in run animation is that when you go in the up position, between the up pose and our passing pose, we put another frame in between if you want to smoothen out the transition, or you can increase the length when the character is in the air for, let's say, by 50%, and look what happens to our animation. You can see how he spends more time in the air than before. This is just a little trick that can help you out. But when it comes to run and walk animation in the games, and you create characters like these, it's quite okay and it's quite alright. For example, Super Mario, he uses this similar resolution for the character, but he only has 3 key poses for his run cycle, and he doesn't repeat for the opposite leg. So he has only 3 positions, and after those 3 they only repeat, which is quite nice design and quite minimalistic. But if you want to learn the full walk cycle, this is what you need. In the next lessons I will show you how you can create walk cycles with less frames using different key poses, but for now this should be it. Okay, in the next lesson I will show you the attack animations for our character. Welcome back. So in this lesson I'll show you an attack animation for our 16 by 16 pixel character. Remember, our canvas is 16 by 16 pixels, not our character in its entirety. Okay, so here we have 2 different attacks, one that can be used in the games and the other one that can be, well, also used in games but different types. Before I go into explaining each and every different frame, if you remember, in our previous lesson, when we created attack animation for 8x8 character, we had the anticipation frame, so when he prepared his sword in the air and then attacked. Again, this is something that you can do, but extremely limited. When you go to the high resolution and you want high responsiveness from your character, you need to completely skip that anticipation frame completely. Just ignore it, because you don't actually want to use it when it comes to those types of games. Now here you can take a look. Allow me to lighten up this background a little bit. Okay, here we go. So our first character, when you look at him, you can see this is his default position. Nothing special about it. However, on the next frame immediately he is already in his full attack position entirely. We also created a nice blur effect again on his arm, just to create a nicer effect, more impact to his entire attack. Now after this second frame, on third frame, this one is identical, but you can see the body is moved just 1 pixel to the back, nothing more. The body is in the identical position, but he goes just 1 pixel back. This gives this animation this snappiness, and when you look at the motion blur, it starts to disappear. It starts to move away from our character like some sort of a sound wave. On our next frame, we want our character to settle in after the attack, so he goes a little bit towards his original position, and you can see our blur is still here but almost completely gone. And on our last frame, our character transitions towards our idle frame, the beginning one. Now you can see there's quite a lot of movement in our character. He goes away and then he travels back a little bit. This type of animation is completely fine when it comes to games where you have turn-based combat and you have static, like characters on one side of the battlefield and the other, and then after the attack animation is finished, he goes back to his original position. So turn-based attack animations, completely okay for that. However, if you have your character in a platformer or an action RPG, you want something similar to this. So after he attacks, we have again the same. He attacks fully, goes back by 1 pixel, but this time he settles in right on the same spot. He doesn't move back. You can see in the first one, he goes back a little bit towards his first position, but in the second attack, he stays right where he is after this snap feeling, right on the same position. And he doesn't return back to his original position, because in platformers, action RPGs, after you attack in the direction in which you are attacking, you want your character to stay exactly there, because it would feel strange if he suddenly went back. In any case, we have again just few simple frames. The attack frame, you want to snap him back a little bit and then slowly transition him to the idle position. When it comes to motion blur, immediately on the first frame, create the motion blur in its full effect. Then you want to basically erase part of the motion blur, but move it away from the character. And on the last frame, we want our motion blur to be almost completely gone. And just like that, we have very, very simple animation. Another thing that you can notice, look at our back arm. Immediately, it's gone. It's gone, completely gone. And our leg is a bit in the air just to create that nicer effect. And when we go back, we still don't see the back arm. Only when we go back, almost back to the other position, we can finally start seeing our left arm in our image. Okay, so this is it. Quite simple to do an attack animation. This time we are using fists and not swords. I will show you in the next lessons on even high resolution pixel art character how you can create different types of motion blur for, let's say, attack with a sword. For now, this should be enough. Welcome back. So in this lesson, I will show you how to create a walk and run cycle for our 32x32 pixel art character. You probably noticed this reference file over here, which I've shared with you in the previous lessons. So we finally get to the familiar design. Essentially, we have 4 different walk cycles. Well, 3 that can be used. The 4th one is really here only for a bad example. So let me show you what I mean. Again, we have our 4 key poses, contact, low, passing, high, and then we repeat them for the opposite leg. Let me show you how full walk cycle looks like. You can see very nice, very fluid. Now, what happens if we erase certain keyframes, certain key poses? Well, if we erase low and high, so we leave only the contact and passing positions, you can see what we get. There is no bounciness to our character which is needed, but try to think about this. On our 8x8 character, we used these exact 4 frames. So the contact and passing one. But it was more than enough for our run and walk cycle, because our character was extremely simplified with no details, well, extremely low amount of details, and that was enough. But when we increase the resolution for our character, he needs more frames. But 8 frame walk cycles, so contact, low, passing, high, repeated 2 times, those 8 frames are enough for any higher resolution character. So you can create a character like 16x16 pixels, it can be 32x32, it can be even 500x500 pixel art character, doesn't matter. These 8 poses, these 8 frames, 4 key poses, are enough to convey a walk and run animation cycle. So yes, once you learn these 8 and you master them, that's all you need, and you'll be able to create any type of walk and run cycles. In the intermediate lessons, I will show you how to create different walk cycles, so how the character walks when he's happy, when he's sad, etc. But for now, this is the default one and should be more than enough to explain what happens. Alright, if we add to our contact and passing positions just one of these 2, either low or high, look what happens. Here I will add the low position. You can immediately see that our animation is much more fluid and it's quite snappier. This is quite a fast movement. Now, if I reverse the situation, if I use the high position instead of low, you can see the effect is almost the same, but not quite. There are slight differences, but you can pretty much use whichever you like. Personally, I would use contact low and passing instead of high, but it's all up to you. Now, if we complete the picture and use all four of these, you can see how our animation is quite nice and fluid. Now, it doesn't matter what type of character you have in this resolution. If you have certain long limbs like character over here, you can just replicate the position of the legs and arms and the height of our character, and you'll be just fine. Now, what is the difference between our walk cycle and run cycle? Well, look what happens if I add on our high position. I create our character just jumps a little bit. You can see he's, well, quite jumpy, like let's say a little girl. Who knows? Why is that? Well, look here. The contact, low and passing are identical to the walk cycle, but on our fourth frame we have the high position, the high key pose, which is different from this one, in a manner that he jumps in the air, and just like that you have a very happy character. Now, if you want to create a full run cycle, look what happens. Quite easy, right? You want, now in this specific case, because in previous lessons I showed you what happens when character bends his entire body a little bit to the back, to the front I mean, and what is the effect. Now look at the effect if our character keeps his entire spine completely straight all the way through. We can again create a run cycle, so you can see how our legs are much more emphasized, especially the arms, in comparison to the walk cycle. When we walk, we keep our arms and legs close to our center of the body. When we run, well, they go further away, and this is what we replicated over here. Just like that, a simple run cycle. So this is all the basic knowledge you need to create a walk cycle. Again, the most important thing is to practice. So after I cover the attack animation for this character with the different types of motion blurs, I will give you finally a challenge and exercise. Welcome! In this lesson I will show you how to create a motion blur on the attack of our simple 32x32 pixel character. Now you should notice that in this specific case we are using more than 32 pixels of height, and that's completely fine. As I said in one of the previous lessons, when you are creating animations for your character, you want to make sure you have enough space for items, weapons, special effects on your canvas for your animation, because when you export it and import it in a game engine, that won't matter. All that empty space will be irrelevant. So I created very simple sword attack. We have one key pose, which is when our character is preparing for the attack, and the second one is the attack itself, and this is all there is. This same pose has 3 same frames. We won't be adding here that snappy effect where I put my character 1 pixel to the left or down maybe. You certainly should do so if you want to create a whole animation, but here I want to point this out just so you can see a few different motion blurs. Because when we start creating our first whole beginner level project, we'll be creating the character with detailed attack animation, walk animation, everything. So let's see how this attack looks without any motion blur. Really simple, right? Not much to it going on. So let's see motion blur number 1. See how it looks. Now, what happens here? Well, when our character attacks, we want to create a motion blur from our first position to the second, and we want to create this curvature to our motion blur, because this essentially is saying that this arc is the arc of our movement of the sword. Quite easy to do. just pick the same color as is your sword. So if you wanted this to be like a metal, we can choose lighter desaturated blue tones, but for now this is completely okay, just to demonstrate. Then on the second frame, remember, our body is always completely still, nothing else is happening. I want your focus to be on the motion blur. Then on the second frame of the motion blur, we just erased certain parts of our motion blur, and you can just experiment. You can literally just go and erase some of them and then move them 1 pixel down, and you will get something like this. Again, this isn't anything specific. You can just mess around, play around, and see what works the best for you. After that, we want to erase even more of our curvature, meaning more of our motion blur. And again, we can just leave it as it is. And when you see, this is a pretty nice and easy to do motion blur. Not much to it, but yet then again, it gives it that nicer feeling. Let's see motion blur number 2. This one is even shorter. This one only has 2 frames. See? What happens here? Well, you take your sword and the arms and you just duplicate them on one layer, and essentially you just want to create like few duplicates of your sword, and you can see what happens. Then we can take this same frame and just leave it there for 1 frame extra. So basically we have 1 frame that lasts twice as long, or you can have 2 frames in normal duration. Just like that, we have very simple motion blur. Now, this isn't something that you should use without extra movement on your character. This applies pretty much to all of these, but you can see it's not as fluid as the rest of these. So motion blur number 3. What happens here? Well, these kinds of attacks are used when we have really, well, of course, really quick motion, but I've seen this effect in a lot of RPGs as well as action platformers. This is really nice effect, and it's quite simple to do. We have only 2 frames, and again, we want to make sure that we create a certain arc from position 1 of our sword to position 2 with our motion blur. Okay? And we want this to be extremely straight. So we don't want motion blur where it's really curved. We want straight ones. Meaning we want really nice straight lines when it comes to creating something like this. So we don't want a slow curve. We want nice sharp edges. This is the first frame, and the second frame is the same. You just erase this longer tail of this entire motion blur effect, and then you shade it in with darker colors. That's all you need. And you can even create this shadow on this top part, and just like that we have very nice and simple motion blur. Let's try different colors. You don't have to. I put red just because, well, I could. What if you wanted a green effect? Well, you can certainly do so, and then just on first frame this is the green, then at second we already want something darker. We don't want to leave in this example we have red, but we don't turn in purple. We don't leave it as red. So if this is green, then we can certainly go and darken it up into darker green, and then even darker for our tail over here. And just like so, we have again very nice simple color palette. Now if you want to create something even different, you can go with, let's say, yellow color. The reason why I haven't picked yellow is because you can barely see it in the background, but nonetheless I will show you. And you can see how this looks. Now you can combine let's say yellow with different colors. It doesn't have to be orange, it can be even red for all intensive purposes. Now you can even put a little tail in purple color, like so, maybe a bit darker, and here we go, just like that. It's quite easy to do. You can just mess around. So these are the 3 easy ones. Motion blur number 1 is when we have really nice curve, full motion blur. Then we gradually reduce its size and its detail. Then we have the motion blur number 2, where we essentially just duplicate the sword and certain parts of the hands to create this easy motion blur. Then we have number 3, which create this sort of a sci-fi look to it. Okay, so this is it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. Welcome back. So in this challenge, I want you to do one simple exercise, but this one is really important. Please do practice it until you feel really comfortable with creating walk and run animations. The attack animations aren't so important in this case because we'll be doing advanced attack animation in the future lessons. But for now, walk and run animation are extremely important. So go back to your old characters that you created previously. All of them, 8x8 characters, 16x16, 32x32. You should have at least 10 of those from each resolution if you've done the challenges correctly. And then pick 3 of those from each resolution. So 3 characters from 8x8 resolution, 3 characters from 16x16, and 3 from 32x32 pixel canvas. Then for each of those characters, create walk animation, and create run animation, and create attack animation. So each specific character should have 3 different animations, except 8x8 pixel characters. Those can only have 2 animation, one which is attack and the other one which is the walk and run animation at the same time. Please post your results in the discussion panel so we can all see your progress. Welcome! In this section I will show you how to create a cohesive color palette and how to create platformer tiles and background and details by using that color palette. I will also show you how to make platformer character and its animations, as well as our platformer enemy and its animations as well. At the very end I will show you how to make few different traps for our platformer mockup, different types of platform views, and at the end you will receive your own challenge to create a platformer mockup game. I hope you enjoy this. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create a cohesive color palette. Now what is that? Well, so far I have shown you how to create a simple color palette by picking a mid-tone and then shifting hue, messing around with value and saturation to get shadow tones and lighter mid-tones and highlights. That's completely okay, and you can create entire color palettes. But if you want a cohesive color palette, meaning the darkest shadow and the lightest highlight or the brightest highlight are the same for all the objects on the image or the entire scene in the game. This means that the darkest shadow for, let's say, a tree will be the same of those as the grass, but as well as for the earth or the dirt, etc. Same applies to the lightest highlight. So what do I want to achieve? Well, let me show you how you can create something like that. And creating these types of color palettes is really important because if you want a cohesive look to your game, this is a bulletproof way to make sure that your color palette stays the same throughout the game. Really nice technique. So let's go and create a very nice document with tiles. I'm using pixel edit, but you can use whichever you want. The reason is that in the next lesson I will show you how to create tiles by using that color palette. Tile width and height is 16x16 pixels. Let's jump into it. So far you have first picked the mid-tone and then created shadows and highlights. Now I'm going to create our shadow tone first and then create mid-tones from that shadow. Now because we need to think about the environment. It's going to be a nice sky, it's going to be bright with very few clouds. This means it's going to be blue, so our atmospheric light is blue. That means that our mid-tones are going to get influenced by the atmosphere and our shadows are going to get tinted just a little bit by the atmosphere light, which is blue. So we want our darkest shadow to be in the blue hue. So let's say something around, hue can be 250 degrees. completely okay. And we want something that is desaturated and really dark. This should be okay. Let's keep saturation lightness on round numbers, let's say 35 to 35, just in case you want to follow along. So hue, saturation, and lightness are 250, 35, 35. Lightness is 35, not value. It's a bit different. Now RGB is 69, 58, 120. This is our darkest shadow. Now usually when I create a color palette, I create a little square of each color, and when I lighten things up a little bit, I just stack them next to each other, and I'm going to be doing that just now. But I want my darkest shadow to have two places, because on our top row I'm going to create our grass, and our bottom row I'm going to create our earth. So let's go and do just that. Now, if you look here at the hue wheel, we are somewhere in the blue hue, and we want darkest shadow and brightest highlight to be like on two halves of our hue wheel. So our darkest shadow is here. This means our brightest highlight will be somewhere around here. So you can see they each take half of our space on the hue wheel, which is completely okay. In any case, since our grass is green, I will keep this space between our shadow and highlight for the green only, for the grass only, and the rest of this, meaning from this part all the way here to the top and coming back here down, is going to be for our earth. So far you have used hue shifting for like 5 to 10, maybe 15, 20 degrees. Right now I want you to break free from those chains. Now we are going to be using hue shifting by a lot, like I'm talking about 50 to 60 degrees at a time. And let's start creating our color palette. I'm choosing just this shadow color, and I'm going to jump quite a bit. So this is almost 80 degrees to somewhere in our pinkish hue, but I'm not going to pick a pink color for our earth. I'm going to desaturate it quite a bit, and I'm going to increase the lightness. Very nice. Now this shadow really looks like it has been influenced by the atmospheric light, which is again blue. From this point I want to hue shift even more. I want to make full circle all the way here to the reddish hue, almost a bit orange, almost just slightly orange, and I want to increase the saturation because our highlights is, well, brighter, they're a bit brighter, but that's not always the case, and I'll show you in just a few moments. But I want to increase the saturation and lightness. This should be okay. From this point again I want to increase, now I want to hue shift even a bit closer to our brightest highlight. And I do want to be careful right now, because once I create this stone, this will be our main color to differentiate the ground from the grass. So do be careful. I think we are getting close enough. Yeah, this is completely okay. When it comes to the hue, now I want to adjust the saturation and lightness. I want to increase the saturation, but I want the lightness to be just a little bit lower. Yeah, I think this should be okay. Very nice. Now if I just pick this color for our ground, you can already see this is quite a bright earth, but that's fine if you are looking for like cartoony look, which I'm currently aiming for. And from this color I want our highlight. Now this will be our brightest color, So I want it to be here in the yellow hue. Hell, we can go with full 60 degrees right on the hue wheel for the yellow color. I want the saturation to be really nice, and even lightness, I want it to be a bit lighter. And this is completely, yeah, this is really nice. Now bear in mind that now when I go over and pick these colors, you will see that saturation and lightness don't always follow the same curve, because just look, you can look at the hue wheel where we go. So we are always jumping for quite a bit, and we start to slow down once we get to the highlight, because here we want to start share the highlight with our grass, but we'll get to that in just a moment. But look at this middle part over here, meaning the saturation and value or lightness. You can see we jump from left to right, up and down. There's no specific curvature, so you do want to mess around and see what works best for your case. Now for this highlight, I do want to extend it even more, so our grass, which will come here in the middle, shares the shadow and highlight, brightest highlight, with our earth. Again, in the next lesson, I will be showing how to create an actual tile sets from this specific color palette. Now, like I said, I want to create a grass, meaning we need to start working our way towards the green color, but we want our shadow to be still in the blue hue. This might sound a bit counterintuitive, but think about it. The atmosphere is blue, and the green and blue are really close to each other when it comes to the hue wheel. So we want our darkest shadows to be in that like bluish hue. However, the saturation and lightness need to vary a little bit, so we want to increase both of those. This is completely fine. Now, believe it or not, even though this is the color of a sky almost, this is our shadow for our grass. It will be used sparingly, but nonetheless, it's still the shadow tone. Let's go even more. Now I want to go even more closer towards our green, but still not completely. I just want to keep it close to green color, somewhere between teal, meaning light blue, and our green color. This should be okay. And I want to increase the saturation for quite a bit, but I want to decrease the lightness. So we get this. Again, compare the old and the new color. You can already see in comparison, this one looks a lot more like the grass. And this is exactly what I want to achieve. You don't have to look at each of these colors on their own. This is the wrong way to look at it. You need to look at this color and how it looks when you are comparing it to the neighboring ones. And this is something that has to do with how we humans perceive colors. And if you're interested in that psychology, let me know. I'll create a new section about it. It's not yet planned in. But essentially, the way we perceive one color can change depending on the surrounding colors. All right, so we are taking this color again. And now we want a nice green color to make sure we have our foundation for the grass. So we want something in this hue, and again I want something a lot brighter, a lot nicer, so we can have a good foundation for the grass color. Very nice, and I'd say this is quite an okay color palette. Now when I go and look here at the hue wheel again, so this is our darkest shadow. We jump a little bit, we jump quite a lot, then quite a lot, and then we are again by jumping quite a lot on our highlight. But when we are talking about our ground, look this jump. It's big, it's smaller, and even smaller. So hue shifting can happen anywhere between, in this case, 21 degrees to 82 degrees. So this is quite a huge jump but you do need to remember that not all colors work the same. And again, this is something that I might explain in future lessons. But if you compare fully saturated color of, let's say, dark blue and bright yellow, now we have these two colors. Which one would you say that is the darker? Well, people would say it's the blue, because for people who can't see the colors, for the daltonists, they usually perceive like blue color a bit darker than the yellow ones. They don't see only desaturated colors completely. I mean, there are different types of daltonists, but you do need to remember that on the hue wheel, even though the saturation and lightness are completely on 100%, like the value and saturation, just because they are like that, they are not the same. One is darker than the other. Again, this is something that has with the illusion of how we perceive colors. Nonetheless, this is it for this lesson. To sum it up very quickly, pick this darkest shadow and then jump and create the earth tones. Then this same brightest highlight will be the ones that you are using for the grass, and then create the grass midtones. In the next lesson, I will show you how to create tiles, so stay in tune for that one. But for now, this should be it. This is a cohesive color palette, which will make sure that our game scene is nice and cohesive when it comes to the color palette and the color harmony. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to create a nice platformer tiles using this cohesive palette that we created in the previous lesson. The process is very simple and very similar to how we created this color palette. So we want to start with our darkest color, and let's go and pick something that will be, well, I'd say 3x2 is completely okay. So we are going to be using this space over here. We will increase it later on as we create even more for our tile set, but for now let's keep it very simple. I want to create nice outline for this entire top part. All right. And we are going to be keeping this outline of the darkest shadow on the top, because for the items or the miscellaneous stuff that we are going to be putting on top of our tile, like trees or bushes, they will have this darkest shadow as well, and this will enable us to blend them in very nicely. For this bottom part, I do want like somewhere on the half, I just want to connect them like so. Again, I'm going to be keeping this left part untagged because once I create this part, I'm just going to copy paste, flip them horizontally, and make sure they're on that side as well. Now, one thing I do want to point out, there are many different types of platformers and styles how you can create them. Tile sets, same applies to them. There are so many different types of tile sets that you can create. I would probably spend hours talking about just the types, and it's not really productive. You can always research it, but what people like to do, they like to create one color for this middle part and then just create an outline similar like how we did for the RPG in the beginner section of tile sets, but this would be for the platformer. Now this would be the grass. They would put some, like, I believe like leaves and stuff like that. They would shade it nicely, and it can look really nice, don't get me wrong. But this, if you want your character to be able to jump on the walls, meaning wall jump, keep in mind that whatever you make into your game is considered game design. and some things players get subconsciously, and it can be a bad player experience if you mess around with that too much. So when we have a tile like this one, because our entire outline is the same, player will think, oh, okay, I can be over here at the top running around, and this means because this is the same color and the same style, this means I will be also able to jump away from this wall or even slide down. And if you want your game to have that, then go for it. But if you don't want your game to have that, make sure that you don't use the same colors, but rather this bottom part can be our ground completely. So our player really knows right from the start, okay, I can jump over here, but I cannot slide down because it changed the environment. Now again, there are plenty of rules when it comes to game design, but this is just one of those things that you need to be careful of. In any case, let's go back and create our first tiles. This is again our darkest shadow. Now I want to make sure that this bottom part is going to be our earth, and this top part is going to be where our grass will grow. Now I just want to very quickly outline where our grass is going to be. Something like this should be okay. And then I'm going to use not this blue color, but rather this mid-tone to try to point out where our grass will be. I want it to be a little bit curved. So allow me to create something like this. Again, just messing around a little bit. I will zoom in so you can look here in the preview what happens. Now I'm going to pick this top part, and because now when it comes to light source, for these types of color palettes, cohesive color palettes, is always best to have the same light source, and the most practical one is straight on from the top down. So if it's angled from, let's say, top right or the top left, it can get very complicated very quickly. So I found that from the top down it's kind of the easiest. So let's stick to that. We want to color in our top part of this image, of this part of the grass. Then we will take our lightest highlight, which is this yellow part, and just very nicely create it like so. I might move it just a little bit. I'm looking here how it looks, and I think it's pretty okay, but I do want to rotate it in the other direction. Yeah, I think this looks really nice. Now I will take this entire piece and I will create sort of a template for our grass. I want this outline to be in the shadow. And now if I take this part out, and I can just take this part of the grass, or rather start from this edge, and then I can just go and copy paste it a few times to get nice leaves. Now I don't want to have for it to be completely the same, so of course I will introduce our blue shadow, and I will just put a few of these here at the bottom to introduce a little bit of difference. I don't want these to be connected at all. So this should be very, very nice. All right, I think this, for now, this looks really good. It's still not finished because I want this bottom part to be connected with our ground. So I will take our shadow like so and take this lighter tone to it and make sure that here we start connecting it to this earth tile, which will be here at the bottom. I might want to increase our shadows just a little bit. And now if I take this over here at the other side, flip it around, you can already see we are starting to get somewhere, but we are still far from finished. Now this middle part, again, I will start with our grass. These two are going to be just fine. I'm taking the highlight, then I'm taking the shadow. I'm just picking here from the side. And our highlight can be here. All right, so far so good. Now we can even connect them if we want to, but I'd rather keep them separated. Now I'll take this entire part, copy paste it, flip it around and put it over here. Now these are connected in the middle, so I just want to break them apart. Very, very nice. Now you can already see this is starting to look on something. So let's go and start creating our tiles. First, I want to keep my tiles over here. So I will create 1, 2, 3 new tiles. So when I mess around with one of them, it will immediately replicate itself onto all of the other copies of it. And now what do I want? Well, I want to create very nice looking top part. So when you look here at the preview, let's shorten it up a little bit. I want it to look very nice and fluid. So far it's not by any means. I might want to create even a bit more of our earth below it. Now this is something that you should, right now you should just mess around a little bit. There are no specific guidelines. You can even see that even I like come back and rework it quite a lot of times, and that's completely okay because you do want to experiment with all of this. Now I'm trying to think about, I don't want to introduce dithering, but I do want just few of these dots to have sort of blocky effect is maybe perhaps the best word for it. All right. Now this means here at the bottom, now I want again flip this around. And I want to create even more tiles. So you can see already here that I can start creating more of my tiles, and I want them to be really nicely connected when I try to create even more of these. So I will go around like so. You can already see how it comes very nicely. I want more shadow to this, so I will take this piece over here and increase the shadow all the way here. Very nice. So far, so good. If I want to lighten things up a little bit, I will take 3 lighter tones, which currently I do want to make. I will take our lightest tone and introduce our highlights on these spots over here, because I will be erasing these. All right. And now I'll take this second one and paint in this entire piece. I'm just going to lighten everything by, let's say, 1 degree of shadow. I will keep my darkest shadow and go over this entire part. So I just lightened up everything a little bit, so I have more colors to work with, and basically so I can use all of the colors which I have just shown you. Going all around, because I want the darkest shadow and the next lighter tone right next to it completely connected. Okay. Now we can start working on this middle part, or rather our earth. Many different ways how we can go about it. I can go with this blocky view, but since I already went with this part of our grass, let's go and experiment a little bit. Again, you can see that I rework some of the parts, and again, that's completely okay. I encourage everyone to do it. So I'll create kind of a rocks here in the middle. I do want those rocks to be flipped from one side to another. Same thing we did with the grass. Okay. Now, I'm not just going to copy paste again from outside to the other for this part, because I do want a bit more of a difference, a bit more variation. Okay. And now I want our highlights. You can already see how it looks here at the side, and this is really important to follow along. Whenever I do this, I try to connect them with these other ones. Again, remember our light source is coming from top, so we want to make sure that our highlights match that. And we need our highlights, which is again is the same like with our grass. We don't want to overdo it, just in a few different places. Very nice. We might want to increase our earth a little bit here, not too much. Yeah, just a little bit. So I'll take and connect it here. I'm just looking here at the side. Very, very nice. So far, so good. Now you can introduce even more so like cracks in between, but I currently want to avoid that as much as possible. Okay. Now I do want to increase the shadows over here, so I will go over it one more time. And pick just few highlights here and there, not too many. Okay, I am quite happy with this. Now I want to extend, if you maybe perhaps want to extend this grass, you can certainly do so. You can even take the tile right next to it and work on it a little bit. Again, I want to take my darkest shadow and just create nice curvature, fill it in, color it in again from the top to the bottom. Now, even though this is our shadow and it's darker than our green, this blue color, I don't want to end here because I want it just somewhere in the middle to emphasize a bit more depth to it. I don't want to overtake our shadows completely with it. And now you can see, yeah, I'll keep it like so. I can see even we can have this tile next to it to extend our tiles over here. So we can take these pieces and connect them, and we already have something very, very nice to work with. You can go and create even more and more details to this entire image if you wanted to, but for now this will be our basic tile set. Now let's go and create a certain, just very quickly we can create a level. I do want to add these two to my tile set over here. So let's go and see if these connect very nicely. I will turn off the grid so it doesn't bother you, and I can see even this middle one is connected very, very nicely to these. Now what happens if I want this to be taller than 2 tiles? Well, we need another one. So we can take this one over here and we can actually create this middle piece over here. Now that we made sure that if we want to create only 2 of these, we have this option available. Now you can even keep it over here like so. It really doesn't matter as long as we keep things nice and clean. So we'll go and duplicate all of these, but we are going to create another section for all of these. Again, starting with our darkest shadow. Nice. And this will be only earth, nothing more, nothing else. I want my grid to be turned on, and I want to add these 3 tiles. So now if I go over here and add them, I want to make sure that I can see in real time what happens with all of our tiles. Again, you can look here at the preview. I want to keep this style for the earth as simple as possible. Again, you can mess around all day creating different tiles with the same colors, but right now I do want something very, very simplistic. All right. So you can basically take even this entire part and just paste it here, but if you look here, it already has those seams, and we really want to avoid those. So when I try to connect this bottom part with the top part, if I just go over here and always leave one pixel free, you can see already that it creates this seam over here in between. And like I said, I want to avoid those, so I always like to connect the shadows whenever possible. And sometimes I'm going to leave them completely, like in this case I connected it over here with the highlights. Again, if you want, you can connect them with the highlights or shadows, or leave it on a few places and then connect them on the other ones. Hell, if we can go, we can simply create it like this, and it should be again totally fine. Okay, going back to our middle parts. Now I know this might be a bit boring to look at, but on purposely I'm not doing this as a speed paint, nor am I going to edit it like that, because I want you to see the whole process. And most people think that professionals get it correctly right from the first go. It's never like that. There's a lot of trial and error to it, and that's actually completely okay, because that's the best way to figure out how things work, and that's also the best way to find what you are looking for. Okay, I'm happy with these pieces. Now I'm taking this part, the lighter tone, and I'm going to go over all of these. And right in the next few moments, I'll show you something really interesting. When it comes to creating tiles, something that you might not think about it in the first few moments, but it's really crucial to get it right. And then I just want highlights all over the place. Again, really sparingly, but I do want them. All right. Now what happened? Now right now we have what we pretty much wanted. We can create our tiles no matter how wide or tall they are. So we can even move this entire piece, even few of them down, but as long as we have this middle section, we can always just go on and keep replicating them, which is okay. But what happens if we only want two? So we want something that is connected only here, like this, so something very narrow. Well, you can see that currently our tiles have this seam in the middle. I mean, it's not that visible because I was already somewhat paying attention to it, but you can always fix that by going onto them and just filling in the space in the middle if you wanted to, of course. Well, let's do just that very quickly. And here we go. And just like that, we have a very nice tile. Now, I talked about in the beginning how if you want the player to be able to wall jump or stick to the wall, that you need to create something that will give the player a hint or a visual sign that that is possible. Currently, these types of tiles will not say that. because we have our top part where you can obviously jump, and you have our bottom part where you obviously cannot jump because it's kind of in the shadow. Let's go over all of these and clean this up a little bit more. Again, it's not necessary, but it's always nice to go back one or two more times just to improve the look overall. For the grass, you can actually go and create this lighter tone and just put it on a few of these bottom parts here, where it, even though it is in the shadow, you can put it because you can see how already it glows a bit nicer. If I remove them altogether, you can see how it looks a bit, it looks okay, but it looks a bit dull. So you can actually just go and create few highlights in the shadow, but not using the lightest tone, but rather the second lightest tone, and you can really easily get this nice, really nice effect. You can do the same thing here. Again, you can go over all of these and mess around the entire day if you wanted to. I mean, when I create tiles for the games, I usually do that exactly, but it all depends how much time you want to invest. But I'd say this looks pretty nice if you just want to create a very nice tile. Now let's go and very quickly create a level. Let's say a level. Now I do want to just erase these because they are just messing around. Let's say our character starts over here. If you don't want the player to be able to see the ground, just put this middle section in the ground and you'll be good to go. Again, now I'm just creating very quickly. This is without background, without anything. I do want my grid so I can see it. Again, something really quickly, but really nice at the same time. You can see how when you have tiles and you need to create levels very fast, there's nothing better than tiling, than using tile sets, because nothing is faster than that. Let's say you maybe have a certain hidden level below it, so player can jump over here and maybe try to see what is there exactly. And here we go, just like that we have very nice and functional tiles. Now at the end of this section, I promise I will cover a lot more things about 2D platformer tile sets, because there are many different tile sets, different types of platformer games, different views, different angles. And quite honestly, even this lesson is a bit long, but imagine if I try to cover dozens upon dozens of different styles, it would take forever and it's not that educational. So I think this is completely nice. You can see how it looks from far away, even here. Again, using our cohesive color palette, we were able to create a very nice effect when it comes to our grass and our dirt over here. I will be creating trees and bushes for like miscellaneous stuff at the end using this exact color palette. So look forward to that. This is it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create a background for our platformer mockup game. So first things first, I do want to remove this bottom part because I want to put some water on it, and in order to do so I need some space. So let me just do that. We will keep using this cohesive color palette, but I want to extend it a little bit. I need a color for our sky and certain shade of our water, and I want a highlight for the water but also our clouds. So let's go and take this blue tone of our grass, lighten it up a little bit, increase the saturation and lightness, and just like that we have our sky color. I want to create even lighter tone, almost completely white, almost, but not completely white, just slight blue tint to it. And this will be our highlight color and also the color for our clouds. And here we go. Currently we have a foreground, so part of the map that our player is going to be on, playing, jumping, moving, killing enemies, etc. But we also need the background. So I'm creating a new layer over here, and I will rename this layer to background, and it will be behind our foreground, and this is the same thing that you would do in a game engine. Alright, so I will pick this very nice blue color for our sky, and very quickly going to fill in everything, and just like that we already have a nice background. Now of course it's not yet finished, but it should be really good. Now one thing that you will notice that is I'm not going to create a very complex background, because in platformers like these ones where you are looking straight on to the platforms, you want to keep the background or the foreground very simple. And the other thing you want to keep complex. For example, in this specific case which I'm creating for you guys, the foreground is rather complex. So you can see the grass has nice level of details and the ground as well. However, the background will be very simple. Or you can go the other way around. You can create the background very complex, but in that case you want to keep the foreground very, very simple. Such cases are pretty common where you, let's say, create the platforms completely black color, so just one color, nothing else, and then you have some things happening in the background to give it more depth. It all depends on what you want to achieve, but for now let's keep the background very simple. If the platform view were slightly angled, so something like, let's say, an owl boy, in that case you can create more complex backgrounds and foregrounds because they can blend in very, very easily. But due to our restriction, because of our straight on view, we want to keep something simple as something complex. Alright, so let's move on. First let's create our water. Now you will notice that for the outline of the water I will be using this same darkest shadow color as I did for the grass and for the ground. So let's go and turn on the grid view. And I'll just create one very simple like mini wave of some sorts. Yeah, this should be okay. And now I want, if you can see this blue color over here, which we used for the grass, we will be using this same color for our water. Quite neat, right? And just like that we have our water. However, it's not yet finished. We still need more shades to it. So I will take this color of the sky and go over these parts where we have our mini wave, and even take this highlight for which we are going to use for our clouds, and just put it here like so. Already you can see it adds a nice look to it if you look here in the preview. So what else can we do with these two colors? Well, we can certainly create very nice, let's say bubbles, for example. So we can take the rounded shape, increase its size. Maybe this is a bit too much. Maybe to, let's say 4. You can take this highlight. Again, I'm using the same color for the sky as I'm using here in the water. I can use this highlight over here, and maybe even this darker outline. And just like that, we have really big bubble. We can create even smaller ones if we wanted to. So something like this. Even indicate them like so. And you can keep building upon that. But let's remove them just for now. But you can certainly do so if you want to. Now we already have something really nice. And because of our same shadow, you can see that our water blends in really nicely with our ground, simply because they share the same shadow tone, or rather the same shadow color. Okay, let's move on. We need just one more thing here in the sky, because currently, even though it looks too empty and we can leave it like that, I just want to add a few clouds. So let's take this highlighted color. Again, we are going to be using the rounded shape and increase the size a little bit. And you can see here in the preview how it will look. And then I'm just going to put few of these next to each other, like maybe 3 of them. We can even increase the count to, let's say, something like this, and already it's a nice shape, and we can leave it just like that, nothing wrong with it. However, if we want to add just a little bit more interest to it, we can again take this darkest shadow and we can go over the bottom part, but leaving 1 pixel in between to indicate this color of our sky. If we want to, let's say, put even more details here on our cloud, we can take the color of the sky and just indicate the roundness of our cloud, just like so. We can maybe put some of them here below. Nothing too complex. As you can already see here in the preview, it looks really nice. It's not overwhelming, because we do not want that. Because if it overwhelms, if we put like, let's say, 100 of them here, you can already see the player will lose focus a little bit from the foreground. And this is not something we want in the game. Again, this is something in the game design theory, but nonetheless, something that you should be aware of. Maybe we can just put 1 more here. All right, so just maybe 1 or 2 clouds here and there, which can be moving, is more than enough. This is it for the background. It's rather simplistic, but please do remember, when you're looking straight on view in the platformer view, you want to keep things simple, either the background or the foreground. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to add a bit more details to our platformer mockup. So those are the kinds of details that the player can't really interact with, something like trees and grass, but they really add a nice touch to the overall image. So let's go and create those. And just so you know, I will be using again our cohesive color palette, and this time I won't be adding any new colors, because I will be creating tree and the grass for our little mockup here. Again, I want to start with the darkest color, and let's go with the tree because it's a bit more complex, so it shouldn't be too hard, even though it is a bit more complex. I want to start with the outline. Something like this should be just fine. Maybe a higher slope, perhaps. Yeah, okay. And this will be like the bottom part of the tree, and I want to add the portion where our leaves are going to be. Now I'm just looking at the overall shape. All right. And I'm trying to get sort of like these mini bumps to it, because those are going to be the main shapes for the tree and for the shading. I want to avoid big straight lines, yet I want to keep the tree, rather I'm always looking here in the preview, but I want to keep the tree on the smaller side. I don't want it to be too big. Okay, yeah, this should be fine. Now I want to decide where the middle of our tree is going to be, because I will replicate one side to the other. Because our shading is from the top to the bottom straight on, this means I can shade one side and I can just copy paste it, flip it around and put it together, and then just change a few things to break the symmetry, because in such things in nature you will hardly find symmetry. And this should be completely okay. All right, I'll start with the bottom part, and I need these colors over here from basically from the dirt. I could create more colors for our tree, like really nice brown color to it, but I'm going to skip this time to keep the color palette a bit smaller. I'm just going to widen up the tree a little bit. And here we go. So I'm putting the main colors in first, and then I'm going to go back and shade it so it looks a bit nicer. This is the first part, and I'm using the darkest tones possible, and then I'll go back and rework it. For this top part where the leaves are going to be, first I'm putting the blue tone, then the dark green color, again trying to imitate the basic shapes, and then I'm going to put this nice green color. The yellow part are just going to be highlights, so I won't be going right now into those will be coming on later. But as you can already see in the preview, even though it's far from finished, it already looks kind of a part of this entire foreground because we are using the same color palette. All right, let's go and start shading. With the bottom part, I want to pull down this darkest shadow just a little bit, and then use lighter tones to highlight the tree texture. Again, we don't have plenty of space here to work with, and we don't need it. So keeping that in mind, I also want to introduce a little bit of this blue here as well, just to keep it a bit more interesting. And I think this part is finished for now. Now let's go here where the leaves are going to be. Again, going to start with the darkest shadow. You shouldn't be afraid to experiment, so please keep some of the parts like closed, like in this case where you can see this is an enclosed area, but some of them are going to be open. So if you look over here, I haven't connected with the darkest color. I left some of this space to like so you have more space to breathe, so to speak. Okay, now where the transition is happening from our dark green to light green, I want to change the outline from the darkest one to this dark green color. Okay, slowly I'll start erasing this middle part, just so I can connect it easier when I start copy pasting it to the other side. one nifty trick that I like to use when you have the enclosed areas like these ones, you can actually take one lighter tone, in this case the green one, and just slightly shade it to break the simplistic look to it, and it achieves this really nice effect. This is the same thing we did over here with the grass when we added this lighter tone to emphasize the shadows a little bit. All right, now let's start building up over here. Again, some areas are going to be closed, some areas are going to be open, and the more we go to the top, the less of the darkest colors we are going to have. But we also want to mix the colors, so just because over here we don't have lighter tones, it doesn't mean we can't actually introduce them like this. So something very small in scale, but nonetheless it can achieve really nice effect. We can even extend the blue tones, but be careful when you are using darkest shadows, like the darkest tones. Try not to have too fast of a transition to the lighter tones. So if I put the darkest, let's say I put this blue color over here, and right above it we have this, I believe, 2 tones lighter, which we want to avoid. So I would put just 1 pixel of this dark green to soften it up. So basically the idea is that the transition between light and shadows should be a bit more gradual. Of course there are exceptions, but in this case let's keep it like so. All right, let's start adding a little bit of highlights. Try to keep the shapes as simple as possible, and then maybe just few pixels here and there, again here in the enclosed area. To keep it nice. Now if you notice here, we already have, as I said, really high transition, so I just want to soften these parts a little bit up. If they are diagonal, in that case it should be completely fine. Okay, all right, so this is a really nice tree. Now I can take this entire part, as I said, copy paste it, flip it around and put it back together. And if I just put it completely here on the middle, you can see the symmetry is obvious. I just want to put, now you can do this in many different ways, but I like to just pull it 1 or 2 extra pixels in the middle, and already you can see this bottom part has been a bit broken when it comes to symmetry, and this is something that we do want to achieve. Asymmetry in nature is, well, really common thing. It's actually extremely hard to find something that is completely symmetrical. Now let's go over this other part and introduce just few random things to break, again, to break the symmetry. It shouldn't take too long, just mess around here and there. No particular rule, just feel free to experiment. Okay, and I think this is, I'll keep it like so. All right, I think this is really nice. We have really nice small tree. Again, you can create bigger ones, but in this little small island, I just wanted to keep it a bit smaller. Now let's create, in comparison, a rather big grass, or rather tall grass. Let's move this tree a bit to the right. And again, we can start with the outline, just to try to get the basic shape to it. And because I shaded this tree, if you look here at the top, It doesn't use this darkest outline as we are using everywhere else. I'll do this same thing here for the grass. Now, why is that? Well, when you are looking here at the foreground, everything has this dark outline, but our tree doesn't, our cloud doesn't, and our grass again won't have. This is something that will subconsciously tell the player that, alright, everything that does have this dark outline I can interact with. So if he falls here in the water, he will probably die or maybe have to swim, but he can jump on these. However, if he doesn't have this dark outline, he won't be able to jump on the tree or jump on the cloud. Again, it depends how you want to code it, but this is something that will be a visual cue to the player. So do keep this in mind. Moving on back to the grass, I want to lighten this part up, introduce a little bit of yellow and blue here at the bottom. Using this dark green color, I will shade things like so. And just like that, we have really simple grass. Now I can take this and again copy paste it, flip it around, connect them together, maybe put it a bit here lower, and in the middle put maybe something else. And just like that, we have something that is, let's say, resembles a grass. If we wanted to, we can introduce new colors. I'm just going to show it as an example, and we can create nice flowers from that very quickly. The point is, you can relax and just have fun, see what works. You can just mess around, but very quickly we have something that blends in very nicely with the foreground because we are using the same color palette. Alright, this is it for this lesson. In the next one, I'll create some character for our game. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to create a simple character for our 2D mockup game. So before I start and create the character, I just want to point out that the background has been changed due to some requests from the students. So we have that fixed. All right. Now, before I create our character, I do want to point out that you always need to think about the game design. If you look here at our map, this is a really nice, vibrant map. Meaning we want to use the color palette for our character with vibrant colors as well. But what happens when you have cohesive color palette which uses, if you remember, almost the entire hue wheel, of course in big steps, but nonetheless, well, there is one simple trick that you can use to make sure your character pops out from the background and the foreground, and that is using black outlines. And this is what I will be using. Of course, there are many different approaches. You could use different outlines instead of black ones, but keep this in mind. If this is just one level or one portion of the game where we use this color palette and we have our character designed in such a way that you can clearly see him when you play the game, but on the next level, when you have really dark level, if your character doesn't pop out from the background, it's ruined. The player experience is gone. Players won't be satisfied because if your character blends in with the background or the foreground so that he or she cannot see his or her character, it's ruined. The game design has been demolished. So when your player looks at your game and looks at the map or the screen, in the split second, he already must notice exactly where his character is. Imagine if your character is using the same color palette here as our map. Of course, this is the character, but I just want to show it. Imagine if you look here like so, would you notice that this is the character? Well, probably not, because it blends in too much with the background. And let's say with this character you want to make like very precise jump. This is another problem because exactly you cannot see where your character is, your eyes cannot follow it. So with this game design out of the way, let's go and create our character. As I said, I will be using the black outline, and I won't be using this exact 16 by 16 tile. I will create my character just, let's say, 1 pixel taller, just to break apart from this 16 by 16 tile. Of course, if your technical specifications indicate that you must create your character within those parameters, please do so by all means, but today's game engines don't require that. So let's go and create it. First, let's start with the feet, or rather the boots, that I will create on the character. I put 3 pixels up, then I will keep 3 pixels in between before putting our 4th pixel. Erase this part, put 2 pixels, and here we go, we have 1 boot. Now, due to our perspective, I don't want the second boot, which is further away from us, to have this same volume, so I will create it just a tad smaller. As you can see, 2 pixels in between, but this upper portion of the leg is 2 pixels by 2 pixels, which is the same as this leg as well. But the feet cannot be seen, which enables us to get this perspective. Now I need to put our belt, and here we go, we blocked out our feet. Now we need the arms. I will go and create it like so. So putting 1 pixel to the side, 2 pixels up, and 2 pixels here. Imagine you have 2 by 2 pixels fist here that will go, and we need the upper arm later as well. I will do the same thing on the other side, like so. Again, if I block it out, you can clearly see it. Okay, now we need the upper arm. I will just go and put 2 and 1 like so. This will be the shoulder part, and on this side I want to have 1 pixel extra here, and then taper it down very quickly towards our portion of the body. And I will put extra pixel over here for our neck portion. Now there are many different heads you can create. You can create bigger heads if you want facial expressions like smiles, and maybe when you damage them to have that clinching face. But currently I don't want that, and I will just stop here to indicate what I want with the rest of this body. So if I were to pick, let's say, a skin tone which is usually in the orange hue for me, some people use it in pink, some in blue hue, I like to put it here in the orange. And if I were to block out this part, this will be the body for our character, and of course these are going to be the arms, and these are the legs. So let's go and create a very simple head. So from the right side, our right side, put 1 pixel to the side, then go all the way to the top, maybe just 1 pixel, leave it, and then start tapering it down. From this side we want to do the same thing, but we want to put 2 pixels before we go and connect it here at the top like so. Now we need our eyes. Now you can put, again, many different eyes. They can be big, they can be small. I just want to have 2 pixels for both eyes. So 1 pixel per eye. Maybe just slightly down. Yeah, this looks cuter. Alright. Now let's go and start designing our character. You can take this as a sort of a template, and which is completely okay, but let's go and start filling in our colors. Now I will just keep our skin tone and use it here, as well as here. The reason why I'm not filling in the torso with our skin tone is because I will be putting clothes there. Now let's go and create something in the orange hue, like a leather, and we'll keep the color palette as simple as possible. And I'm already looking here at the preview. If you can see here in the preview, you can already notice our character immediately. If I were to turn on the game, I will immediately notice our character over here and know that I can actually control him. And this is what we do want to achieve. Now the next step, I want to shade it. I will take one shadow tone, put it here, and then I will create a lighter tone, like a highlight. Okay, very nice. Now we can keep our character like this, but I do want to break this middle part from these black outlines. I do want to keep my black outlines only where I really need to have them, so on the outer side of our character, and I do want to keep them here near the feet, just because this is a platformer, so our player will mostly be looking at the feet of our character, like subconsciously. So I will erase this part, maybe even this. Nah, I'll keep it. Yeah, I'll just erase this part. And on this portion, I want to have like a belt. So let's take our highlight from the grass and put it here. And for our belt, let's say I want to have it metallic, so something in the blue hue, really desaturated and low in value. This should be just fine. Now I can take this same color and I can create some sort of a helmet or a helm. This should be good. I do want, however, a certain shadow tone to it. Oh yeah, this is great. Okay, now I want to, yeah, the hands feel rather empty, so I'll just put like a bracer here. And shade it like so. I also want to shade our skin tone, so creating one very simple tone over here. Now why I'm shading here? Well, because our helm will of course create a cast shadow, because it will block out portion of the light coming from the top. So we are putting shadow here. And we are putting shadow here below the neck, simply because, well, if the shading is coming from the top, the chin is going to block out this portion, as well as the cheeks, which are here at the side. Now our character doesn't have any mouth or nose, but we can certainly put them if we wanted to. But instead of putting like a dot for a nose, I will just take this same shadow tone and just put it here like so. You can clearly see this is a nose, but it's not very obtrusive, because if I put it like here, it can be quite strange. So this is also one quick tip. All right, so we have a very, very nice character. I do want to put this metal part over here, just to give him a bit more interest. Just checking a few different shading techniques. Yeah, I'll keep it like so. However, I do want to increase the highlight here. On certain portions of our character. Yeah, this should be really nice, and maybe here and here as well. I will take this same shadow tone and maybe just make it slightly darker and saturated. Yes, I like this one a bit more. And I will also shade these parts as well. And here we go. Our character is finished. As you can see, he is not inside the 16 by 16 pixel tile, but it's really nice. If you look here in the game view, in the preview, you can immediately see our character. Now what happens if we were to, let's say, erase these outlines? Well, let me show you. I will do 3 examples. First one will have the black outlines, the second one will have these purple ones, and the third one won't have any outlines whatsoever. So you will see the difference very easily. Let's say I can fix him like so. Now, if you were to turn on the game, so let's say you don't see anything and suddenly you can see them. Which one out of these 3 pops out from the background and the foreground the most? Well, if your answer is this most left one, then yes, you are correct. If you are saying the middle one, well, not really. And if you're saying that it's this one, definitely not. Now, this is something that you need to train your eyes for, because if you are not aware of this, meaning if you answered any one of these 2, you just need to practice a little bit more on your awareness. So this is very nice character. Now for this character I will be animating him in the sprite, but we will do that in the next lesson. This lesson right now is finished. We have our nice character for our 2D platformer mockup game. Until next video, see you later. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create a very simple but yet effective walk cycle for our 2D platformer character game mockup. Alright, so what do we have? Well, beforehand I just created both the idle and walk cycles. However, as you can see, not only did I import my character, but I also imported a portion of my background from Pixelated to Sprite. So just so you know that I didn't do anything special, just export your character as a PNG. Same goes for the background or the part of the background. This is just so you can already see how your character will kinda look in the game engine, though I always encourage you to create prototypes in the game engine of your choice. Alright, so what is the type of this walk cycle? Well, some people call it 3-frame walk cycle, I personally call it 4-frame walk cycle, simply because we have 4 frames. But the reason why some people call it 3-frame walk cycle is because you have 3 different frames and one of those frames repeats 2 times. So essentially you have 3 different frames, but you know, one frame used 2 times and then you have, well, in total 4. Alright, so before I show you how my character looks and explain actually why is it like that, I just want to explain that when you take into consideration your game design, you need to keep in mind what kind of a game you want for the player's experience. So if you want a high action-paced game, so extremely fast and snappy, you want to keep the frames of your animations as low as possible. So in this case, the walk cycle is only 4 frames long, and that's perfect. However, if you are playing let's say some sort of a slow-paced game like a puzzle game and something like that, where you really want to put as much details as possible into your character and animations, then you would create, let's say, 8-frame walk cycle or even a bit more. But keeping in mind that our game will have like fighting, and fighting should always be snappy and fast and have tight controls, this is why I'm keeping my walk cycle to only 4 frames. So where did I actually get the inspiration, or where did I learn that I can create such a simple walk cycle which is really nice? Well, it goes all the way back to Mega Man. Yes, now I will show you an example. You probably know this guy, and you can already see 3 frames, 1, 2, 3, but the second and the fourth are completely identical. They're the same. So you can see that these types of characters in the old era, where they use only few colors, as you can see he only has like 5 colors on him in total, and that's completely fine. And when it comes to his entire body, well, you have only 2 shades of blue, and that's great. So essentially when he goes into a passing position, you can't even notice. I mean, the frame by itself, does this look strange to you? Well, yeah, it kinda does, but it doesn't matter, because it's part of the animation. Distortion always happens in animation. It's part of the animation principles, and all it matters is, does it look good? So let's go quickly and see what is here in this animation. Well, first of all, the default, what you will find the sprite, that the duration is 100 milliseconds, and if I keep it just like that, you can see it's very fast. And yes, this can work, but I wouldn't really use it. So what I did is I increased the duration by a lot actually, and each frame lasts for 250 milliseconds, meaning these 4 frames in total last 1 second. So if you go and see, it looks really nice. Now I can again tweak it around a little bit. It all depends in your game engine. I can go to 150 per milliseconds, and this actually looks even a bit better. So we have first frame, which is the contact pose, which means that the legs and the arms are mostly spread apart, but also at the same time the head goes down by 1 pixel. So on the passing pose, he goes back up a little bit, and as I already explained in previous lessons, the passing pose is where the legs and the arms are switching positions. And then on the third frame, he again has the contact position, but for the different leg. As you can see, his arms and legs are in different positions. So on the first frame, you can see that his left arm is in the front, and on the third, the left arm is in the back. Same applies to the other parts of his body. Alright, so what I did was I basically replicated this animation, or rather took its principles and implemented it here in our character. It's quite simple to do. So you can see this is the basic position. Then we have our first frame. Now, since the design of the character is quite a bit different than from the Mega Man, we have a lot more colors going on. So we have 3 shades of each color, and then we also have the black outline. So we kind of have to be a bit more careful. We can't go really that much extreme as here in the Mega Man. Plus, when you look here at the height of the Mega Man, he is also quite a bit bigger than our character. So we don't have as much space to work with, so we need to be a bit more careful. So what did I do? Well, one, you can see that the height of our character has been reduced by 1. I basically combined the contact pose and the down pose into 1 single frame. And as you can see, the arms and the legs are spread apart quite a lot. And in order to achieve this effect, you can see that this arm over here, I only raised it up a little bit. I didn't put it like over here to the side, because it kind of breaks the body a little bit. So I just kept it near the body but put it up a little bit. Same goes for the other arm, but in this case, since I did want to create this nicer effect, I just replicated this arm, as you can see on the other side, just so it sticks out a little bit outside from the body, because this perspective from this side allows it, but not on this one. Okay, so the fifth one is, as you can see, similar to our Mega Man on this second frame. We have where the legs are going in the passing position, so basically they start to go one in front of another, and same goes for the arms. And again, second and fourth frame are the same, identical. And then we have our second contact position, where our left arm is hidden behind our body, and the right arm is now, as you can see, a bit here in the front. So basically this creates really nice effect. Again, you can play around with the frame's duration. I chose 200 milliseconds in this case, so I didn't go with 150 or 250, and I think this looks quite nicer. Again, you can tweak it in the game engine however you like, so it's not really something you should be too much worried about right now, but again, just something to experiment. Alright, when it comes to idle position, well, when I played, this is just a really simple blink, nothing more. As you can see, he quickly blinks. Now, what did I do here? Well, one frame, which is this blink frame, lasts for 100 milliseconds, so only 1/10 of a second. However, the second frame, which is essentially, well, our idle character design, this one lasts for 3 seconds. So every 3 seconds, he just blinks very quickly. Now, you can create multiple idle animations and then make make a loop or maybe randomly choose between those idle animations. Maybe after like 1 minute of animation he would maybe sit down or go to sleep or something. I mean, you have plenty of things to go around to make your game look nicer, but essentially this is all there is to it. In the next lesson I will show you how to create an attack animation with our character, again without any weapons, so he will be either hitting or punching the enemy. Alright, that's it. Until the next video, see ya later. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to make an attack, damage and death animation for our platformer character, or rather when he receives damage, how he will react and why. So in previous lesson I've shown you the idle and walk animations, which are pretty simple, and I'll stick to that for this mockup just before we get into more complex animations, especially with animation principles. After that we'll be able to create pretty much any type of animation you want. But before that, let's keep it simple. So first I want to show you the attack animation and how it looks. I'll just zoom in a little bit. So very quick attack. So why is this? Well, our platformer will have these sorts of attacks, and essentially when you are playing a game you want the attack to be as responsive as possible. So you want to be it quick and snappy and short. You don't want to make 20 frames of attack animation and stuff like that in games like this. So let's go over and see our animation 1 frame at a time. So if you notice here, I have 3 layers. I have the SFX above and below. The SFX above are the special effects, so to speak, that go on top of our player character, and SFX below are the things that will go behind our character but still in front of our background. So this is something important to keep in mind. And when you look at the death animation, you will see that we have SFX below there, and you'll see the animation YZ. However, on the attack animation, we have this sort of a easy beginner friendly blur, which is completely white color, and it indicates where the punch is going to be, sort of a air force type of stuff, so sort of a air pressure. Now what I do want to show here is the first principle of 12 animation principles, and that is squash and stretch. Now I've shown it really simple. Now these are the 2 frames for attack. This is the idle position, and in the game you won't code this into your attack animation, but I just wanted to show it how it will look, the transition between the idle position and to the attack position. Now when you look at the attack, this is it. The only in between I've put here is this squash and stretch. So what I did here is I basically took this entire character and just stretched him by 1 pixel and squashed him down by 1 pixel. So when you are doing squash and stretch, you want to make sure the volume of the character is the same, and I'll get into that in more details later on. But for now, this creates this really nice effect. So if I slow down the frames, let's say by double, you'll be able to see what I mean. So he basically stretches a little bit and then goes back into position, which is a recoil. In any case, he also blinks, if you notice, on this middle frame, and then goes back and settles into his true attack position, so to speak. After that he goes back to idle position. Now this entire attack lasts for only 200 milliseconds, so just a fraction of a second. Of course, in game you can make it as fast or as slow as you want, and that is especially something you should do during the testing phases, but for now this is it for the animation. I also put again this SFX and special effect, which is, like I said, pure white color. I put it on the fist, as you can see, and on the frame after I just reduced the amount of whiteness and pulled it 1 pixel to the right to keep the momentum going, and just like that we have a simple nice attack animation. Now what is the next? Well, when he receives damage, again I put 2 frames, but in reality we have only 1 frame, and that is when he receives the damage. He's just going to squinch a little bit, and this is how it looks. Why is this? Well, let's say we have a trap. like a spike trap, and he jumps over it. I want our character to have some sort of a reaction to it, be it the attack from the enemy or let's say the environment. Doesn't matter. I just want something universal. There are many things you can do. I just squash him a little bit so it's clear visual cue to the player that the player is now smaller. He received the damage, and because of this blocked out design, he can clearly see where his character is going to land. Because usually in games, when you receive damage, you have sort of a recoil. When, let's say, you receive damage, you go away from that enemy a little bit, or that trap, or whatever. In any case, this is something you should be considered. So what I did here is I basically just took the arms, put them close to the chest, and closed the eyes of our character and just pulled the head by 1 pixel down. This is it. Again, I won't be creating the animations where he just bounces back a little bit when he receives damage, because that is something that we do with the coding. Alright, going to the death animation, and this is where we have the SFX below. So first I'm going to play it a few times. Again, very simple animation, but it kind of looks cool, I think. Well, so what happened here? Well, on the first frame we have the idle animation. First I'm going to turn off the SFX so they don't confuse you. On the second frame, he closed his eyes, pulled his arms just 1 pixel towards his torso, and he went on his knees. And the way we did the knees, if you look very closely, we just pulled a few pixels to the left side. Very quick and easy. So after that, he falls down, and this is it. After that, nothing else happens with the main body. So we essentially have only 2 frames of that. First he goes onto his knees, then he falls down, and he stays down for good. The only thing that happens from here on is the special effects behind him, and this is it. This by itself is more than enough for your game if you wanted to. However, I decided I want more oomph to it, and also to explain one more principle, or rather one extra tip with animation, and that is using these special effects. So if I turn off, you can see this is all there is to it, but when I combine them, you get this nice effect, sort of his soul leaving his body and going away. Now if you look 1 frame at a time, you can see that when he falls down on the ground, only then do I start the animation. So right now the first 2 frames of this animation, or let's say of this ghost or soul, and essentially what I did, I just replaced the black color with the white color, so you can see the outlines aren't black but rather white. Same goes for the eyes, and I lightened up all of these colors. And this is somewhere you can do in 2 ways. You can either pick colors which are when you look at here and the hue saturation value, increase the value, or a lightness, you just increase the lightness of all colors. Or you can even go and cheat a little bit if you want to. You can go into Photoshop, use mask tool, and just paint over it or increase the lightness. However you want to do it, it's completely fine for these kinds of stuff right now. Okay, so only when our character has fallen to the ground, the frame after, we are finally starting to animate this little ghost disappear. And the way we do it, I pulled him 1 frame up, erased some straight vertical lines from him, and repeated the process. On the next frame, I again increased the size by 1 pixel, and I essentially erased a lot of these things. And on the last frame, I pulled it a lot up and just erased most of it, just so he disappears nicely. So if you take a look at this ghost, this is it. Sort of a, I don't know, maybe like a teleportation or something, not sure. But in any case, you can see how these look when you combine them. Alright, so this is it for the attack animation. Quite quick and snappy. Same goes for the receiving damage, and we have nice death animation. Now one thing I do want to point out, that in platformers, especially in games where you die a lot, you don't want your death animation to be too long. You want it to be quick and easy, so the player doesn't get irritated by constantly watching his death all over again. In total, our death animation lasts for only 1 second, and that is completely acceptable. Again, if you have even faster game, like where you die a lot of times, I'm talking like few times a minute maybe, in that case you want to make your death just a fraction of a second. But in cases like this should be just fine. Alright, this is it. In the next lesson I will show you how to create our first platformer, and probably the last for this mockup, platformer enemy. I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how we create our character. And when I talk about character, I mean the enemy character. So here we have, again in Pixel Edit, though you can create the character wherever you want to, our little character mockup. So we need our enemy. And the two things I want to do is, first of all, I want to create sort of a basic enemy, which is, let's say, sludge or slime or something like that. And I will be using the same colors that I've used for the environment, so the cohesive color palette. Essentially you have two ways how something can pop out from the background. First is using different color palettes, of course, such as our character and using black outlines. And the second thing is movement, so animation. And we are going to be using black outlines and our animation to pop our enemy character from the background. Quite simple, because I do want to show that you can still use these same colors in order to create something, and this will look just fine when we do it. So let's go and create something. So like I said, this is sort of a slime or sludge, so you want to make something in this general shape, and I just want to make sure it's symmetrical, so I'm just going to be building up a little bit. Yeah, I think this should be just fine. Alright, so first we need our midtone, which is going to be this green color, like so. Now, how will our player character know that this is an enemy and not sort of an NPC? We need to give him some sort of a visual cue. And this is where we'll put some eyes here on our character. And I do want to use white color. So we made our character something like really angry. I'm just testing out a few different possibilities. I think this should be just okay. Alright, so the main thing to notice about this is the eyes. You will notice that our character has only 1 pixel per eye, so I do want to keep that same thing on our enemy. But since we have a lot more space to work with here for the face, I just wanted to put like big eyebrows, like angry eyebrows, that will indicate to our player that this is truly an enemy. Alright, so moving on, we want to put some shadow, and again we are going to be using these shadows over here. And let's see. And I also just want to replicate everything on this side for now, though I will be fixing this shading really early on. And then we want some highlights. So I think this should be fine. Again, remember, light is coming from the top, but in this case I do want to indicate the direction of our enemy, where he's looking at. So I just want to shift it a little bit to the side, not to keep it completely from up. If I were to keep it completely from up, you'll see that our highlights would be something like this or even like this. But since I do want to indicate our direction, I'll keep it like so. And again, I do want to put some indication down here. Now, why am I putting something over here on the bottom? Well, if I put everything in the shadow like this, you'll notice that our character loses volume. And if I keep just a few portions of these in the light, he sort of gets those layers in between, which are quite useful to give him some more dimension. Okay, so moving on, I actually want to start fixing shading. I want to reduce the shading on this side and I might increase it on this one. Excellent. I think our character looks really nice. So what I want to do now is I'll be jumping into a sprite, and I'm just gonna copy and paste our attack animation, just one frame. Again, it's distorted because of copy paste stuff, but nonetheless, I just want to make sure that when our player character hits, he can actually, his fist actually reaches our enemy. So basically, since our enemy is smaller than our character, we want to make sure the fist will still reach our enemy. And I think this should be just fine. If I were to make our sludge here or our slime even smaller, then it could be a little bit problematic. Now this design is finished. You can still layer more things on top of it if you want to. So let's say you want to add more shadows, you can certainly do so by using this blue color. Then we can go into the purple color. You can make different facial expressions. You can keep layering on top of it if you wanted to. However, I do not. I just want to keep the design extremely simple. I might even change this design just like so. Yeah, I think this right now, yeah, this looks perfect like now, in my opinion. So this is something that you should keep in mind, even by using these colors. Right now, if you look at the background and you see our player character, you will notice this enemy character, but a little bit harder. He does use the black outlines, so it should make things a lot easier for our player to see. But when we add movement to our slime, then it's going to be pretty obvious that this is truly something to interact with, and in this case the enemy. So I just want to also show you really quickly what happens if we don't use black outline, but we rather again use this purple one. You can see that one character stands out a lot, which is this one with the black outlines, and then this one without the black outlines, but rather these purple ones. He kind of more blends in. Again, something to keep in mind. All right, this is it for our player enemy character design. In the next lesson, I will animate him, so look forward to it. I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to create few simple animations and explain the design decisions behind them. So here we have our enemy character for our platformer. You can obviously see I'm again in a sprite because it's simply easier to animate there than in pixel edit, for me at least. Now I have few different animations: movement, attack, receiving damage, and death. I will go over all of these. They are quite simple, but the design decisions behind them are quite important, so I want you to pay attention. Now the first one is the movement. Here we have 4 frames, and second and fourth frame are the idle position, the idle design position. Quite simple. However, the first and third frame are different. The first frame is where when our character actually moves, our enemy character moves in the direction in which he is looking at. You can see I just basically squashed and stretched him a little bit, and then on our third frame he goes into resting and also anticipation position for the next movement. So you can see that he goes back a little bit, prepares to gather energy for the next step, and then goes again to stretch onto the next step. Now there are many different types of sludges and slimes. They can be of thick liquid, thin liquid, they can be jumpy, they can be really slow and sloppy like this one. It all depends on what you want to achieve. The reason why I made the movement like this is because this will be our first enemy in our platformer mockup, and the only enemy actually. But if this were again, this would be our first enemy. And the reason why I want to make him slow is to empower our player. So when our player plays the game with the main character, I want him to feel, or her to feel, powerful enough that he can actually defeat this enemy. Quite simple. Alright, so let's go to the attack, and this one is quite important. As you can see this squashing position before he actually goes to attack. this is a visual cue to our player that this little slime or sludge will actually attack. You can make it as announced as you can, or you can make it more pronounced, less pronounced. It all depends on what you want to achieve. But you can clearly see this anticipation frame before he attacks. And then he attacks really quickly. He basically just extends his body and then settles in that position and goes back to his idle movement or whatever it is. Now, if you remember our main player character, he doesn't have this anticipation frame when he attacks. He doesn't. He immediately attacks with his fist, and that's all there is to it. And why is that? Well, you need to think about what is anticipation and what is the purpose of anticipation frame. When you are playing the character, you know full well what will happen if you press the button for attacking. You know when you press the attack button, you will attack. So there is no need for anticipation frame on your character. Really no need whatsoever, because you know what will happen. The purpose of anticipation frame is to give people a visual cue of what will happen next. When you are in the full control of the character, you do not need anticipation frames. However, on the enemies, you definitely want those, because if you're just trying to kill the enemy and suddenly he attacks you and you receive damage and you have no idea what happened, that's your fault as a game designer. You need to make sure you put good anticipation frames so players can actually see what will happen in a split second or in a second or two after. They need to be able to predict what will happen next based upon your anticipation frames. And this is why on the enemies, we do want to put anticipation frames before the attacking. We do. On the player character, not, because if you put anticipation frames on your player character, it will feel sloppy, it will feel unresponsive. So again, for our player controlled characters, anticipation frames are a no-go. You do not want them. However, on the enemy characters, they are a must. Alright, so after this we have the damage or receiving damage. You can see he just goes back a little bit and closes his eyes. Here is how it looks. Again, for this type of fast action paced platformers, so I want to keep everything really fast, be it the attacking that lasts only for 2 frames, be it receiving damage. The movement doesn't have anything to do with it, but the actual combat needs to be really fast and responsive. And once he receives the damage, you can see he goes and dies. I didn't want to create any extra droplets apart from these two and create some sort of fluid animation, because I want my enemy character to disappear as quickly as possible. And you will notice that on our damage frame, this animation is sort of similar to that animation, but he actually goes and disappears. So when you think about it, let's say this damage animation will happen a few times depending on how much HP he has, and then suddenly he'll just disappear. And that's completely okay. So quite simple, that animation. Again, squashing and stretching our character is really important, and I basically just erased few parts of our character until he disappears. Nothing complex. We'll get into more complex and fluid animation later on, but for now let's keep it simple and think about the design of our game. And this is pretty much it. So we have the movement, attack, receiving damage, and dying. You don't need anything else for basic platformer enemy. Again, you can make whatever you want to, or however complex you want it, but generally you want to make the AI of our enemies in the beginning of the platformer as simple as possible, so their movement is predictable, their behavior is predictable, and especially their attacks. This is it for this lesson. I will see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how to create few simple environment traps for our player to respond to. Now I have a separate layer here called traps, and I want to create just few different ones so I can show you the design decisions behind them. I will show you one that is barely visible and one that is highly visible. So first I want to create some sort of spikes. Now when you are designing spikes, you need to think about how high can your character jump, because this will influence how big or tall you want your spikes to be. Right now we know our character will be able to jump at least this high because he needs to get to the next platform. So I want to keep my spikes a lot less than that actually. I usually like to keep them sort of a half of the height of our character. So something along like this tall, just to keep it a bit more interesting. Again, you can increase the height, decrease the height however you want to, but for me this is completely good enough. First of all, you don't want spikes to be coming out of the ground right away. So let's say I have a spikes, and right away you can see them like so, and that's completely okay. Of course, these aren't spikes just yet, but if he were to go and suddenly they just come out without any visual cue, so if our traps would be behind our tiles, so if our spikes were behind our platform like this and suddenly they just came out, that's bad design. Again, just as we did the anticipation frame with our enemy, we need to give our player some sort of a visual cue that the trap is there. The easiest way to do that is either to leave some sort of a mark on the ground. In this case, we can create something like in really light stone. So if we have something on the ground like this, that's kind of obvious what will happen. This is a good thing. We want this. I actually want it to be slightly above the ground, just because of our perspective, not to break it too much. This will be just okay. First, I want to design two things. One, I want my trap to be completely unactivated, and then one which is activated. And for that we need two designs. First of all, let's go with the open one. So this will be our platform for our spikes, or sort of mini spears. And once they are activated or sprung, something like this should be completely okay. There we go. Quite simple, quite easy, nothing too much to think about. Now, if it's unsprung, so if it's not activated, we want to keep another copy. You want to remember these positions, as I want to keep few black dots to indicate on which places our spikes are going to be coming out from. And this is completely okay. We're done with this part. Now, if I wanted to create, let's say, a cannon of some sorts, now these are what I call vertical traps, because you need to jump vertically in order to, well, evade them. There are also horizontal traps which influence, well, the horizontal cue. So in this case, something like this. And the easiest way is to create some sort of a cannon that launches, well, cannonballs, or again, you can make arrows, bolts, whatever you want to. And let's go and create something very simple. And here is where I'll explain how you can make it more obvious or less obvious, depending on what you want to achieve. All right, something, okay, this should be just fine. All right, and again, we need purely black color because this is sort of a cannon. And here we go. Now this by itself is kind of hidden, and player will, well, it's kind of obvious, but at the same time it's kind of hidden, so we need to be careful. You can, especially if you shade it with the environment like so, it's going to be hard to notice. But because of this black color as a high contrast, people will still notice it to some degree. If we wanted to make it more obvious, we can do two things. We can give highlights to our cannon, and I mean something really, really light. So something like this should be completely okay. You can obviously see it more clearly now. Now, if you want to make it even more visible, just put the black outline on the entire thing altogether. and suddenly you have clearly visible cannon trap. Again, you can make it however you want it to. And this is it. Quite simple, quite easy to do. What you do need to keep in mind again is how high can your character jump, how fast can your character move, because he needs to be fast enough to be able to dodge any trap whatsoever if you are making a platformer. Again, if you really want to make the player character receive damage on purpose to learn something, that's completely okay, though speedrunners really don't like that. Just to keep in mind. Alright, this is it for this lesson. In the next one, I'll actually go and create this entire mockup as a single image. I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will show you how to create a simple platformer mockup using the assets you have created so far. So what do we want? Well, first of all, you need to decide what is the size of the image you want to. It can be small, it can be big, it doesn't really matter, as long as you can put everything you want into that mockup. So what do I want? Well, as you can see, I already created a few things here, but I kind of want to extend it a little bit vertically just to put a few extra things. I will turn on my grid view and I will go and create just a few tiles. Whoops. All right, so here we go. Now again, you can keep it as small or as big as you like. And the reason why I'm doing the mockup right now, because I want to show you something which will serve you well. So let's say I don't want this platform to be as this. I want it to be only, let's say, this tall. Well, in this specific case, then I need to create new tiles. And if you are doing a mockup and you realize you don't have enough tiles to work with or big enough tile set, you can always increase it. So in this special case, I won't be drawing over these, because if I do, you can see I change all of them. And you can actually press tab to see which platform which tile belongs to which part here in the tile set. So what I actually want to do is I want to map out new tiles by holding Control and just left clicking. And right now you can see I added our new tiles over here. And if I were to draw over these, you can see it's not influencing these ones because I created new ones. All right, and I want to keep this again really simple, so I'll just increase this bottom part like so, and just slightly fix the edges like this. I want to keep all of this, almost all of it, in the shadows, and just create a thin layer like so. And this is it. Just like that, we created really quickly a thinner platform for us to work with. Now we can move this around as much as we wanted to. Now, if you are doing a tile-based system and you are trying to implement it into Unity or any other software, if you are sticking to the grid, this won't be possible, because you can see that our tiles right now skip between tiles or between two grids. You want to make sure, if you are doing this for prototyping purposes, that you always keep everything where it's supposed to be. Again, you can tweak it wherever you like, but I highly recommend to keep everything like this, and during gameplay sessions or during testing phases, that you tweak your character's capabilities instead of the environments once you finish it. All right, so what else can we make? Well, I want to have our little grass over here, so I will need to grab it, duplicate it in a few different places. I can even swap it around, create a few different ones just to keep things more interesting. If you recall that I can actually go and create some sort of a flower over here. Again, adding little details like these is always nice during mock-up phases, because mock-up is nothing more than sort of a concept art, so to speak. It's not the concept art, but it's kind of similar to it in a sense that you want to see how your game would look. And I really enjoy doing these. So, you know, you can take your time, you can do whatever you want to. Again, I can actually take this entire tree if I wanted to. I can make it over here. So sort of I can make it even behind our little grass over here or on top of it. You can increase the size of our tree if you wanted to, but if you do this, please make sure to fix that everything looks as one pixel. You don't want pixels to be in different sizes. You really don't want to do that in the game. So keep everything at the same size. But if you do want to resize things, please do so. But again, fix them in that case. Let's say our character has an option to go somewhere above it, like so, and we don't know, well, if this is a one let's say platform from which our character can actually jump over it. So let's say basically one-way platform. So right now our character here is kind of hitting it because we designed it that he actually has 1 pixel extra, which is completely fine. But if our character can jump like this and stick it here, it's completely fine. If he can go around it, again, it's also fine. It all depends on what you want to achieve. Now, right now, I want just to make sure now during mockup phases, this wouldn't be obvious, but during gameplay, it would. So I want to keep my tile just slightly taller, like so. And let's say I want to give some ladders over here. Keep in mind, during mockup things, you can do whatever you want to make. Yeah, this should be just fine. I just want to keep everything on a separate layer, just not to mess up with the tiles. Again, this will be a rather simple ladder. But adding details during this phase is kind of crucial because you are making a mock-up. So whatever you make here might end up in the final game. So you want to make sure you have everything in the place. However, whatever you do put in mock-up, you want to make sure that it's applicable in the game. Again, you can change it later on, but you need to keep in mind, for example, if we have ladders over here, that means our player character will be able to climb them, right? So this is something to keep in mind during game design. I can actually use these same ladders over here, like so, if I wanted to keep it more towards the design of our environment. And I actually do want to keep it like so. So I'll work on top of that. Sort of a special type of ladders. All right. And now I can even take this highlight and just go over a few different spots. Like so. And you can immediately see how our ladders are more easily visible. Now, I didn't shade them correctly just yet, as I want to create a nice contrasting highlight. I can even take this yellow color if I wanted to and just put them over here, though it will kind of hurt the eyes. So let's skip that just to make sure everything looks nice and cohesive. So I'm taking this color and just shading it here on top. And this should be just okay. Now you can make more enemies, of course. You don't have to keep only one. You can only show a portion of them. You can show them in the either direction. You can even take the animations of movement. So let's say the movement frame and put it here as a sort of a view. You can create more of these. Well, I just noticed I have an extra tile over here. All right. So we can take this cannon, we can create more of them if we wanted to. We can even go as far as go to this side. We can make them on different heights if we wanted to, and here we go. Just like that, we have a very quick and nice and simple mockup game. Now, you need to think about what will people see from our mockup game. Well, when they take a look at this little map, they will see, okay, we have our character, we have some enemies, we have some traps, different traps, we have nicely the environment, we have some water, we even have a ladder to climb, obviously. So you can put a lot more things into it if you wanted to. It's all up to you. Have fun with it. I mean, it's a mock-up game. It's sort of a, like I said, sort of a concept art, so you can do whatever you want to. And this is pretty much it. You don't need to overcomplicate things. You can put coins if you want sort of a side objectives or even main objectives. It's all up to you. So this is it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next video where I'll explain a few different types of platform perspectives. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this lesson I will show you how different perspectives in platformer work. So first one on the list, we have our Super Mario, and the view here is straight on. It's quite simple to do. The only way you indicate the shapes is with shading. So you can look here at these tubes. They are cylinders, which you can obviously see from the shading. However, if these were, let's say, slightly angled from the top, you would be able to see the roundness on the top portion. Same applies to the bottom part. So you will be able to see something like this. However, because it's a straight on view, you can only see it like so, which is this portion over here, right? Same thing applies to these bottom parts, which are actually cubes. However, you can only see rectangles because you are looking at them straight on. It's quite easy to do. This is the most simple perspective in platformer games. And if you are making your first game, this is what I highly recommend. The next one is quite similar. And again, this is Super Mario, but the shading is a bit different. You can see these boxes have more shading, which enables you to get more rounded cubes to get a slightly different effect. But again, everything is still straight on. The character, you look at him, it's straight on. The enemy is straight on. This is straight on. Again, you can see this back portion is straight, but this bullet is actually rounded. So if you were to look at it from behind, you would see the circle. Quite easy, right? All right, the next one is Slain. This is a modern game. It uses modern techniques such as glow effect here on the sword or here, but essentially the view is still the same. Even though the art is more complex, you can see the bottom part where he will run is still straight on. This crosser here, straight on. This gargoyle, even though it is quite higher, you can see it, it's straight on. Same goes for this building, for this tree, everything. It's the easiest way to make a platformer by using straight on view. The amount of details you want to put in or the visual effects you want to put it, it's all up to you. But the perspective is something else. And this is what you generally want to be looking out for. Now let's go into something that creates a bit more three-dimensionality, because when you look here at the Super Mario, you have the foreground, which are the platforms and the enemies on them. You have the elements which are kinda in the background, but they still blend in with the foreground, and then you have the background like the sky. It's okay, it creates a nice effect. However, here at this line you can see multiple layers. You can see the foreground, then the background elements, that even background more, then even more, then even more, right? So you have few layers on top of them to create more three-dimensionality. Let's go to Mega Man to see a different perspective. Now here it's sort of in the middle and everything goes from there. So when you look here at the top portion, you can see this platform, you can see its bottom part, so its bottom portion. So this generally means you are looking at it slightly from the bottom, but when you look here at the platform on which the Mega Man is standing, you can see this portion over here, and this means we are looking at this portion from the top to down, whereas it's opposite for this platform. So we are kinda in the middle here, so we can see things that are on top, we can see them from the bottom, and things that are below us, we can see them from the top, right? This perspective is a bit trickier to pull off, but nonetheless it's here. But notice that we still look at our characters straight on, they are not angled. So if our character, let's say, jumps over here, we will still see him in the same perspective. His perspective won't distort, because if we look at him from slightly angled, like this road over here, we would see more of his helm. If he jumps here, we would see more of his bottom of his feet, but we won't, because the design and animations of the character is still straight on. So in platformer games, you design your character and your enemies with straight on view. You achieve three-dimensionality with different perspectives, depending on what you want to achieve. Moving on, here we have Blasphemous, also one of the newer games. You can see its platform is also slightly angled, as you can see right here, wherever you look at it. It also has a lot of layers when it comes to foreground and background elements. So you have the foreground, you have first layer of the background, you have the second, you have like the third, and we have like 4 or 5 different elements of background stacked on top of each other to create this nice 3D effect. However, the perspective, you can see it's slightly angled from the top. So this is why we can see these portions where he's going to be running on. Even when he runs, you can see his feet are still in the same line. Okay, so again, he's going to be running on the middle here, but because we put some more dimension to our tiles, we get this nicer effect of three-dimensionality. When you look at the edges, you can see they're angled from one side here, somewhere they're slightly angled here. They're kinda all over the place, but they're not, because we are again slightly angled from the top. If this were 1-point perspective, you won't be noticing. I'll get into that later, but for now, this is completely okay. And I think this art style is really awesome, so this is why I included it. But again, perspective is what matters. Let's move to, let's say, the older game, like Prince of Persia. You can see that, again, you can see this bottom portion to create, again, three-dimensionality, but they stuck with only one angle. So you can see these platforms have one angle, these have one angle. Even the walls here, they have only one angle, one angle, one angle, one angle, etc. And that's also completely fine. However, when you look here, they use one angle, then different one, then even slightly different one, etc. So you can do whatever you want to. Let's go on the last one. Again, even in Prince of Persia, again, you can see the enemy, it's straight on view. The character, straight on view. Always straight on view. Owl Boy, same thing, straight on view, etc. But the background elements are not necessarily in straight on view, just like it was in Super Mario. Here you can see all sorts of beautiful pixel art in Owl Boy. You can see the bottom portion. At the same time, you can see this top portion. You can see its side portions, and you can see even the bottom portion. So this is a quite interesting perspective, and it has a lot of details. And I highly suggest you to take a look at the Owl Boy if you want like sort of a high-level pixel art, because it's really beautiful. But the perspective again is what's important. And basically you can see that from the simple ones, be it style like this one or the Slain, straight on perspective is quite easy. In comparison to these other ones. Again, you have like the Blasphemous, which uses more angles than one. You have like Prince of Persia that uses always only one. You have Mega Man that uses like from the middle, and you have even Owl Boy that uses like sort of a combination. It's kind of from the top down, but you can see the bottom portions of it because you are kind of far away from them. Again, artistic freedom, but essentially these are the main types of platformer views. There are a few more, but I think these are the main ones, and then you can combine them and create whatever you want to. Just keep in mind, you gain three-dimensionality by introducing more angles to your platformer design. So if you are to use straight on platformer like Super Mario, if you want more three-dimensionality, use more layers like Slane did. Maybe introduce the foreground elements that will block out the character when he passes through it, right? But again, keep it fun. Do keep in mind also that styles like Owl Boy that have a lot of details obviously will take a lot more time to make than, let's say, Super Mario. But nonetheless, decide which style you want to, depending on what type of game you wish to make. Now, if you want to make an exploration game, which is the main hook of your game, exploration, you want three-dimensionality as much as possible to create a nicer effect. However, again, it's not necessary. You can create nice exploration games completely with straight-on view, don't get me wrong. It all depends what you want to achieve with your game. Just to keep a few things in mind, I mentioned all of these things. This is it for this video, and with this we will conclude our platformer section. In the next lesson, I'll give you the challenge. I'll see you in the next one. Welcome back. In this challenge, I want you to create a platformer mock-up game. So basically, you just want to create a concept art of some sorts where you will actually provide with a simple image of your platformer mock-up. So please be sure to use at least one character and one enemy, as well as a few different tiles, and then you can add as many details as you want. You can use any color palette you want. You don't have to use this cohesive color palette that I've used, but please make sure you have fun. Also, you can use any perspective you want. It's all up to you. After you finish the challenge and you created your mockup, please be sure to post it and share it with other people so we can see it. Welcome. In this top-down view section, I will show you how to create a top-down character and how to animate him, how to create grass and dirt tile, and basically create a tile set, a house, a vehicle, and few different small objects. In the end, I will be showing you how to create a simple game mockup and challenging you to do the same. Welcome back. In this lesson, I will explain to you what I consider a top-down view to be in pixel art. Now, the reason why I said what I consider it to be simply because there is no general consensus on what top-down view really is, because some artists consider an RPG view to be a top-down view while others don't, etc. Now I will explain to you what I consider to be a top-down view, and then I will give you what other people consider top-down view to be, and I'll give you essentially my explanation. Now you can pick and choose whichever terminology suits you the best or makes most sense to you. However, in this course I will specifically stick to my own explanations and terminology so you know what we are talking about. Alright, so first things first. What I consider a top-down view to be is when you are looking at the objects, characters, maps, or basically the entire game only from top down, meaning there is no angle whatsoever. So you are looking at the object completely from top to down. So sort of a bird-like view with no distortion or without any angle whatsoever. So here you can see one example of it. This is called Raptor, I believe. This is a game I played when I was a kid. You can see the perspective. Yes, the shadows might be slightly moved a bit to the side just to create that illusion of depth. But if you look here at these rockets, if you look at this land over here, these trees or bushes, if you look at this plane, you can see everything is only from top down, nothing more. You cannot see the bottom portion of the ship, you cannot see the front of the ship, you can only see the top side of it, and that's all. Another example would be well, this whatever this is, I'm not sure how it's called, this game. I found this image on the web. If anyone knows it, great. And essentially I think this is about some tank destroying buildings, or maybe on farming. But you can see how these houses look, because try to remember these, because I will show you what other people consider to be a top-down view houses, while I consider them to be an RPG. In any case, you cannot see the doors of this house whatsoever. You can only see the roof, which does make sense because we are looking at it only from top to down. Another example would be Over 9,000 Zombies, I believe it's called, on Steam. It's a top-down shooter. And why do I say this? Well, top-down view is usually used for shooters. So if you look here, this is a shooter. It can be even Space Invaders, so to speak. This also is, I believe, about destruction, so it can also be like a top-down shooter. And here we go. Now, if you look here at the tiles, so let me find a clear one. So this one, for example, you can see it's completely straight. There is no angle. If we had an angle, it would look more like this. But it doesn't, because there is no angle to it. We are looking at it from straight up to down. You can even see how the characters look, though I'll explain the characters in the next lesson. You can see the character's head and shoulders and arms, but you cannot really see its face. I mean, try to think about it. When you're looking at objects only from top to down, would you be able to see the face? Well, not really, unless the person is looking up. So this is essentially the entire view without any distortion. So not one perspective, 1-point perspective, or 2-point perspective, nothing like that. So this is what I consider to be a top-down view, right? So there is no distortion whatsoever. You look at things only from straight top to down. And here are a few examples what I consider to be an RPG view, not top-down view. So this is a Hyperlight Drifter, awesome game by the way, but you can see it's angled. You can see this statue, for example. If this were angled from top to down, you would only be able to see this portion over here, so only this rectangle on top. You wouldn't be able to see the rest of this statue, basically, right? So this is what I consider to be an RPG view. As soon as something gets like a lower angle that you can see other things of that object, or other perspective of that object, I consider that to be an RPG view. Here's another example. This is a character. Now you can see this top-down run cycle. This is made by Pedro Medeiros, I believe. You can see this is an RPG character in my own opinion. However, according to him, this is a top-down view. So again, there's nothing wrong with terminology on any side whatsoever. I just want you to understand there are different opinions. So another example would be this house, again made by the same person. You can see how the houses look. You can see the doors, you can see the windows. However, you can see how the houses look from top-down view. Now this is what I consider to be top-down view, and I consider this to be an RPG view as soon as it's angled. But again, some people consider this to be top-down house. So it's up to you to choose whichever you like. I consider this to be an RPG view, and I'll cover that in the next section. Now there is one very interesting perspective, which I call distorted perspective or combined perspective. Look at this over here. Now this is a quite old game, I believe it's Zelda, and if you look at the floor, it's completely top down. So you can see these tiles don't have any, let's say, thickness to it. But when you look at the walls and you look at the door, you can see they are angled, but they are not angled in only one way. They are angled in all 4 directions. So you will find plenty of games where like this entire bottom portion is hidden in black, and only one side is angled, and that's again RPG view in my case. But what I want to say here is look at the enemies. If we were to remove the background completely, you can put these enemies on a platform. Now try imagining platform here on the bottom. You can see the perspective for the characters is like on platform view, right? So we are combining basically more perspectives into one. You can see the character. He looks like an RPG view character, so closest to this one. The enemies, they have a platformer view. The tiles, the floor tiles, they have like top-down view perspective, and these walls at the side, they have like distorted one-point perspective RPG view. So when you find something like this, it's quite interesting to look at, simply because there are so many things going on. And this is something that I wanted to mention. Just because there are certain amount of views, it doesn't mean you cannot combine those views or other perspectives into one game. All right, so feel free to experiment. As always, have fun. So this is all I wanted to cover. In the next lesson, let me explain to you how a top-down character will look in my own personal opinion. I will see you next time.